Welcome to Crimson Tales. Support me by subscribing my channel and like, comment, share my videos. I died. As simple as that. It wasn't an accident, nor was I murdered. I was just unlucky. I had cancer. Lung cancer to be exact. The funny thing was, if you have that type of humor at least, that I had never smoked, ever. I had never tried and never intended to. But fate's a bitch, it seems. So, I lived for 3 years on a constant pity party. My family suffered. My friends suffered. Everyone that was relatively close to me entered a depressive mood with just seeing me. It was maddening. Seriously. I was going to die anyway. Wasn't that enough? Apparently not. I had to see the sadness and hurt in their expressions every single time. Don't get me wrong. At the start, it was somewhat comforting that they cared so much. But as time passed, it just made me sick. No pun intended. So, I distracted myself. I dove face first into books after an aunt of mine bought one for me, and so it started. My addiction to any type of entertainment. Months passed with my head buried in books, mostly fantasy, but sometimes I chose something else, just for a change. After that came TV programs, from cartoons to normal series, films or movies, whatever floats your boat, and even documentaries. After that, I delved into anime, after seeing Naruto. Naturally, the next step was manga, and their Korean and Chinese counterparts. As I kept going deeper and deeper, I ended up reading light novels, and I stayed between all those options until what was my last year of life started. That's when I took my last step into the abyss. Even I don't know how I ended up in that godforsaken place. But I did, and I loved every second of that hellhole. Well, not every second. Some people have a couple of problems in the head. I mean, I get it. Some people are into Harry X Draco. It's okay. I don't like it at all, but it's okay. However, when you realize that there are people that write Harry X Snape, you understand that there's not something like too much for people. There's no limit for humanity's imagination, for good or bad. Bad in this case, if you ask me. And like that, in a couple of paragraphs, I described what were my escape mechanisms. My only breath of air on the sea of pity that surrounded me. But I had a time limit, and I reached it eventually. I was kind of sad that I wouldn't get to know how a lot of stories ended. As for everything else, well, 3 years had made it so that I had tied all the knots. I had had long chats with every family member and friend that I could. More than once with most of them. Everything that had to be said was told. People must have thought I was crazy with how calmly I took to my death. But really, what was I supposed to do? Cry to sleep every day and make things worse for everyone? No. Ha! There were better things to do with my time, like watch videos of rats fighting for food with Linkin Park music. That was worth every second. I did cry myself to sleep the first month or so. I'll admit, they could also have thought that because sometimes I chuckled to myself thinking that some Arad would take me to another world, preferably one from an anime or something. But alas, Truckun didn't think I was worthy of being a chosen one, apparently. So, I died. There was nothing spectacular about it. There was no me seeing the light or feeling my soul leave my body. There was no doors of heaven or stairs to hell. Nothing. Everything just was, and then everything just wasn't. Like when you fall asleep, you don't even notice that you do, but you obviously do. Except, I noticed, because I was very much aware of the nothingness that surrounded me. It wasn't quite the darkness that was described sometimes. Or maybe it was. It was a bit confusing. It was dark, yes. But I saw, can you see without eyes? I didn't even know if I had eyes or not. I couldn't tell, really. Back to the point. It was like there were different colored lights everywhere. But when I tried to focus on one, it was only darkness. All lights were dark in color, barely noticeable from the pitch black background. And like that time passed, nothing happened. I could only do what I had done every time I was bored to death, pun intended. I started imagining what this or that story would continue as, or maybe thinking of an original story of sorts. Obviously, none of them were truly original. It just ended up being a mishmash of ideas stolen from others and put together in something that felt awesome. And obviously, I was the main character, because I had to feel awesome somehow. Eventually, I run out of ideas and stories, so I just stared at the blackness and tried to see the lights. At some point, I started to think those were other souls, but I could never confirm it. It was an interesting, if not disturbing, observation to do. Didn't really change anything for me anyway, so I pushed that out of my head even though I didn't have one. And before you say it, yes, I felt pretty stupid making Brooke jokes now and then. I did kind of understand why he did them though. It was a way to deal with it. You could either cry or laugh about it. I decided to laugh. Not sure I could cry anyway, as I didn't have eyes. All this continued until a thought crossed my mind. Will I be here until my mind breaks and disappears? Even I couldn't take that in stride. Time passed as that thought came back more and more. You have been chosen. I would have jumped in surprise as that message appeared in front of me, but, well, you know the drill. I stared at the square that contained the words for a minute or two, although for all I know, it could have been hours or days. It looked just like an open scroll would, and had the words written in black. After that analysis was done, the darkness that had surrounded me for who knows how long started to change. Little by little, it changed to a blinding white that ate everything else. Soon, there was only white. And when the white disappeared, I woke up. Welcome. Wake up, AG! I felt something hit my head and I instantly sat straight on reflex. What greeted me was the sight of a classroom with the teacher looking thoroughly pissed at me and the rest of the class snickering and giggling. I said intelligently, and everyone started laughing as the teacher's eye twitched. What on earth? I blinked. I'll let it slide because it's your first time. Just don't turn into a Naruto. I heard a shout of protest at that, but the teacher turned around to continue the class. I didn't hear a word of what he said. I was still sitting there, stunned. What the hell was happening? My hands balled into fists. I felt my fingers, all of them, my palms. I felt myself resting against the wood of the chair, my arms on the desk. I was seeing things. All this was a bit too much for my stimuli-deprived person. How long had it been since I had merely breathed? My eyes widened. I was breathing, and it wasn't any type of breathing. I was breathing well. It had been so long since I had been able to breathe without difficulties. It was like the cancer was gone. My thoughts seemed to freeze at that thought, and it held the full focus of my mind for what seemed like hours, though it couldn't be. Still relishing in the fact that I could feel, see, smell, I thought about the situation. I was in a class that I had never attended. I had never been to a classroom like this, and I was pretty sure I had never had a classmate named Naruto. Oh no, oh hell no. And surely enough, as I turned to the side, I saw a short, scrawny boy with tan skin and spiky yellow blonde hair. I gulped. Oh, come the fuck on. Couldn't it be something fun like Pokemon instead of freaking Naruto, where everybody and their mother can kill people with 3 hand signs at the very least? That's what a part of my mind complained about. The rest of it was just trying to wrap itself around the situation. Of course, I had read reincarnation stories and the like. A quarter of the fanfictions were like that, for crying out loud. It didn't make it any easier to process, though. I mean, who in their right mind truly believed they would get reincarnated, and in a fictional story at that? What the actual fuck? As my mind felt like shutting down, it drifted off back to the class. It was being given by none other than Iruka, I realized. He seemed to be introducing subjects that would be seeing at a later date. It seemed like the kind of thing to do in the first day. At that, my eyes darted around the class searching for the main cast. Everyone was there. From I totally don't brood to look cool Sasuke to I'm not creepy at all Shino. They all seemed a bit different than canon. Was I in an earlier year than canon, or was it just the start of canon's last year of the academy? I distractedly wondered. Now class. Iruka started after finishing what felt like a first class of introductions. We'll go outside for the physical training. Hell yeah, shouted the excited pair of Naruto and Kiba. I numbly walked with everyone else. Fortunately for me, nobody seemed to take notice that I didn't seem to know how to walk for a couple of seconds. It felt really strange to do so after so long. It was like that moment in which you take a pen after not writing all summer and suddenly you feel like you don't even know how to use it. I was disturbing to realize that I had forgotten how to walk. How long had it truly been? Soon enough, we were standing in a large open area. It seemed to have a path that we would probably use to run. An open space that probably was used for spars or normal physical conditioning. A little further away, outside the running course, was what seemed like a place for target practice, and then there was the monstrosity that was the obstacle course in the middle. It looked like something that would get people killed. Knowing the shinobi world, it was a possibility. We'll start with some laps around the training area, Iruka said, and I took solace in the fact that I wasn't the only one to sigh in relief. Most of the civilian, or at least not main cast people, had done so. Don't worry, you won't be doing the obstacle course until next year. There were more sighs at that, and even some complaints from Kiba. Meanwhile, I was just frowning in thought. So, it seemed that I was at least a year early, maybe more. I had never been good at reading people's ages. What are you waiting for? Start running. And start we did. After a few awkward seconds, I had to do conscious effort to not laugh like a madman. It was exhilarating, the feeling of rush that came from running. After so long, barely to move, and then the void, it felt so freeing. So I ran, and then I continued running. Even when my legs felt like they were going to die, I continued running. My lungs weren't stopping me. They were working to their full capacity, but they weren't stopping me, and that was even more sweet. The moment I came back to my senses, I noticed that the only ones that were running close to me were Naruto, Kiba, and Sasuke, all of them ahead of me. I didn't have any delusions about being at their level, though. The only way I could keep up with them was because I had been ignoring my body. Soon enough, I fell behind, and all the clan heirs in Sakura passed me by. I didn't mind. I was still better than the rest. Good job, everyone. Especially you, Edgy. Iruka said, looking at me. I looked at him strangely. That wasn't my name. Then I remembered that he had called me that before, too. I know you fell behind in the later part, but you did pretty well at the start. He commented, probably misunderstanding my expression. I didn't reply. Maybe we can still make a shinobi out of you, loser. Kiba said mockingly. I continued my silence as Iruka chided Kiba. There was a simple reason for my silence. A scroll, just like the ones I had seen in the void, appeared in front of me. Floating steadily in the air in front of my face, just like the others. It had a message in black. The message, though, left me speechless. New skill acquired, running level 1. Holy sh! Now, let's move on to physical conditioning. Iruka said cheerfully, while the civilian students whined and groaned. I followed him to the clear area with my legs screaming at me for more rest. I didn't pay them any mind, though. My focus was fully on the apparently invisible, as nobody commented on it, scroll that continued to float in front of my face. Could you disappear? It would get awkward, Rie? As soon as I had thought the word disappear, it did. That was a relief. I didn't trust my chances of doing so verbally, or tapping the scroll without being noticed when I was surrounded by ninjas and ninjas in training. After that is when my mind started freaking out, and that just made me freak out even more. Skills, I thought. And what greeted me was a scroll with the title Skills, and the only thing beneath it was running. My heart started hammering against my chest, and my ears seemed to close themselves as everything went silent, and I was drowned by my thoughts. No, perks, same thing, just that this one was empty, besides the title. Now, you may want to know the reason for my freakout. It was simple. There was no sign of me having gamer's mind or body for that matter. Status: Eiji Sato. Title: Academy Student. Energy points: 100. Chakra points: Strength. Dexterity. Constitution. Chakra. Chakra control. E. No HP, no intelligence or wisdom for that matter, I thought numbly to myself. Let's start with some push-ups, shall we? Iruka said, blissfully unaware of my internal struggle. I did so together with everyone else. My mind wasn't on the training, though. I was looking straight at my status screen. It told me so much, and so little, at the same time. There were no health points, and I didn't seem to have gamer's body. That meant that I wouldn't be able to pull a bullshit move like getting pierced right through the heart and live because the attack hadn't taken all my HP. I also didn't have the intelligence and wisdom stats. That meant that I couldn't force myself to be smarter or have better memory through stat points. Which brings us to the third thing. I didn't have stat points nor a level, so I wouldn't be able to become stronger by farming quests if they existed at all, and killing things. Although that last one didn't sound so good, knowing that I didn't have gamer's mind to keep me sane. With a sigh, I closed the screen and followed Iruka's instructions through the physical conditioning. As we finished it, I received another notification. New skill acquired. Physical conditioning level 1. I resisted the urge to sigh. Now it's lunch break. There were cheers and sighs and relief at that. I'll see you all in an hour at the classroom. At that moment, I went and sat in a shadow. I needed to think. So, summary. I am in the Naruto world. I have a name that isn't mine, and I have a really nerfed version of the gamer. Is that all? Am I forgetting something? Right. Inventory. At that, I received yet another disappointment. The screen showed me at the top, and what I was wearing. I had a pair of dark brown shorts, a white t-shirt with the Konoha symbol in black in the middle, and a pair of shinobi sandals in black. The shocking thing was my face. I looked like fucking Shusui, or maybe a son of Kurenai would be more precise. I wasn't sure. I had short and messy pitch black hair and red eyes, so it could go either way, with one having the Shuriken and the other natural red eyes. I doubted I was related to either though, the surname didn't match, and there was no mention of Eiji in canon, although this could be an AU. The disappointing part though, was that I only had 5 spaces in the inventory. I spent all of a second lamenting that fact before I desperately tried to expand the screen to see if there was more. There wasn't. I wonder if it works with one of my stats. I thought dejectedly. In my mind, it was too much coincidence that I had 5 inventory spaces, and all my stats were 5. Still, with my mood down, I summoned my status screen once more. It was so plain and empty that it hurt to look at. I tried to see if I could get more information on everything. Nothing worked. It was a good thing that everything seemed to be pretty self-explanatory. Wondering if the title did anything, I had an idea. Titles. Academy Student improves the rate at which your stats and skills increase by 5. Underwhelming, but useful all the same. I decided to see my skills next. Running active Ilhul 1. When used, increases the speed of the user while running by 10%. Consumption 10 energy points per second. Physical conditioning. Passive. Level 1. Improves the rate at which your strength and constitution increase during training by 5%. I did a double take at the cost of running. What the hell was up with that overly high cost? I would get tired of running after 10 seconds. What the fuck? Rereading the skill stair times, I came to a conclusion. The skill wouldn't apply every time I ran. It was actually a boost to be applied on top of my normal running, as it said that it increased my speed when I activated it. And while running, I hoped I was right. As I felt myself get hungry, I sighed. No cheat of not needing to eat for me. I probably needed to sleep too. Standing up, I checked my inventory again. This time I ignored the disappointment of the 5 spaces and checked its actual content. One of the spaces was occupied by what seemed to be some kind of notebook. Taking it out was dangerous. You couldn't know when you were being spied on while inside a ninja village. The mere thought was surreal though. I made my way back to the classroom and to what seemed to be my seat, at least for the day. I had my backpack there. It was a simple beige color, and I decided to use it. Taking a moment to check it, I only had a notebook and pencil case. The notebook was blank, probably for the academy. With that out of the way, I decided to take out the other notebook from the inventory, while my hands were inside the backpack. Taking a look at it, I didn't have much problem guessing what it was. It was the diary of the real Eiji Sato. I felt my blood run cold. It seemed to have started last year. First year of actual ninja academy, he said. He explained that before that, they had pretty much the same education as the other kids. Last year, they had started being taught the shinobi rules. the ranks, missions, etc. It was a how to be a ninja for dummies without being taught any actual jutsu, be it ninjin, tai, or any other. I also learned that he was an orphan. His parents died during the Kyuubi attack when he was around a month old or so. From there, we lived in the same orphanage as Naruto until we both started the academy. How did I know that? It was mentioned how the matron told the other kids to stay away from the blonde because he was dangerous. I didn't take kindly to that. The original Eiji, though, seemed to take her word for it. Anyway, as we entered the academy, we were given a place to stay at and a stipend to live with. It was a program available for all orphans. Apparently, it was a bit shitty, I thought, that the best option for orphans was to be a shinobi. It was practically forcing us to be ninjas, but considering a lot of the things that happened in this world, it wasn't too bad. At least it wasn't the only option we had. When I had a pretty good idea of what my situation was, I decided to think. The first thought was, did I actually want to be a ninja? Sure, everyone wanted to be one while watching Naruto. But once you seriously thought about it, this world was plagued with death and worse. They were ninja, not superheroes as they made you believe. They were assassins, thieves, and spies. If there was a shitty job to be done, it would probably end up in the mission hub of a ninja village. It wasn't the type of life I wanted to live. Not at all. Despite that though, I had to be a ninja. Why? Simple. As someone that had watched the show and read the manga, even if I wasn't as big a fan as others and had forgotten lots of things, I knew things. Things like the sand invasion. Like Pain's assault, like the Fourth Shinobi War. No, I refused to die as a mere civilian would in any of those scenarios. I would have the power to defend myself. Even if I didn't reach Madara and Hashirama's absurd power levels, anything would be better than nothing. I would stay as far away from the void that was death for as long as possible. So, I would be a ninja. With that decided, I took the diary and started reading again. During the whole thing, I couldn't help but wonder, had I taken over the body of Eiji? But I didn't dwell on that for long. I hadn't chosen this. I hadn't done anything. I was just dead and then I wasn't. If someone was responsible for this, it wasn't me, but I felt guilty. So, I made a vow. I would follow Eiji's goal. It seemed pretty reasonable too, so that helped. He had been told of his parents. His mother had been a chunin while his father had been a tokubetsu, jonin specialized in taijutsu. Eiji's goal had been to reach further than both of them had. His thought process was that, had they not been killed, they would have both reached jonin level. As such, he would make it for both of them as well as himself. He also thought that they would be proud of him if he followed their steps. It was a goal I could get behind anyway, as it aligned with my own of getting enough power to survive this crazy world. So, I was on the path to jonin level from now on. There wasn't much more in the diary, sadly. Even though it was a diary, Eiji seemed to write only when something out of the ordinary happened, or when he thought about something he thought diary-worthy. As such, it gave me a good idea of the important stuff, but it still felt a bit dull written like that. I couldn't help but wonder, was all this made up by whoever had put me in here in the first place? I shook my head. There was no way for me to know. Sighing once more, I made a summary of the important stuff in the blank pages of the diary, leaving it separated from Eiji's original stuff. I was glad I could kind of guess where he lived by bits of information spread over several entries. He seemed to live in the same building as Naruto, and despite what a lot of fanfics said, it didn't sound so bad a building. Several others that were part of the Orphan Shinobi program lived there too. With everything noted down, I put the diary back into the inventory, making sure to do so from inside the backpack for good measure. Then I sighed and checked my pockets. I had money. Thank God. Kami. Those things would be confusing for a while. Anyway, with the reassurance that I had money, I stood up and made my way outside to buy food. It was lunch break after a— "Where are you going, Eiji?" I heard Iruka's voice from behind me. I turned around with a confused expression. We are about to start classes again. My despair must have hailed because he started chuckling as he made his way back inside the classroom. Fuming, I went after him. As I sat down and the rest of the class made their way inside, I sighed. Maybe Naruto can show me where Ichiraku is after classes, I thought idly. Then my thoughts froze. What was I going to do in the friendships department? Befriending Naruto out of the blue would be suspicious at best. The Hokage would surely keep an eye on me if I got close to him without reason, and he would be the least of my worries. What would Danzo do if I got close to the Jinchuriki? There were a ton of people that could cause trouble for me if I befriended Naruto, I thought as I looked at the blonde. He seemed to be fine anyway. This didn't seem to be one of those worlds where he was constantly attacked and shunned. Look at that goofy grin as he blatantly ignores Iruka's lecture. He was fine. That's what I wanted to think. But he wasn't. I knew. I had Eiji's note on how kids were told to stay away from Naruto. That was all the proof I needed. Maybe he wasn't physically attacked, but there was some resentment directed at him at the very least. The problem was I brave enough to do something on it? I was disgusted at the fact that I didn't know. Trying to keep my thoughts away, I turned them to the others. Sasuke would be difficult. The only thing he respected and wanted was power, and I wasn't sure of the first part. It was pretty obvious that we were post-massacre just by looking at him. Befriending him while I was a weakling was out of the question, and I kind of disliked him, so there's that. Ino and Sakura were out too. From what I knew, they wouldn't take kindly to some random guy approaching them. Ino seemed to tolerate Choji and Shikamaru because she probably knew they would end up as a next generation of Ino Shikacho, or because their parents were the previous one. I didn't have that benefit, and I refused to be treated like another Naruto by Sakura. Nope. I wouldn't go anywhere near Kiba until I could kick his ass. I was sure if I did, he would just put me down while boosting his own ego. He looked the type, and that mixed with the fact that he was as knuckleheaded as Naruto. I would end up killing him if I ever got strong enough. Shikamaru would be a difficult one. He was sure to notice something was amiss. He was scary smart after all. I would have to be careful when around him. Especially, there was no need to add a friendship to the mix, at least not until I had a better grasp of everything in this world, that I would have to know. Choji was out because being near him meant being near Shikamaru. Shuno was creepy, yes, but he wasn't too bad. He could probably use a friend as much as Naruto. His clan was sure to face some scorn. He was pretty smart himself, if I recalled correctly, but not overly so. He would probably not notice anything wrong if I was careful. Hinata was extremely shy, but she wasn't too bad either. Actually, she would probably make a great friend. I couldn't think of anything bad about her, personally at least. Her extreme shyness wasn't a real problem, unless you were Naruto. But first, I would have to know this world. I would need a week or so to get used to Konoha. Making a map would surely help in that regard. I would have to follow Naruto around to know some places. I knew what apartment of the building I lived in due to the diary, but I didn't know where the building actually was. After I got that, I would have to explore the city to know where to buy stuff and all that. It would be a busy week for me. While I thought all this, Aruka had been explaining the uses of Shuriken Jutsu. It didn't mean only Shuriken though. As some may believe, it also included kunai and senbon. I barely listened though. Everything was pretty simple so far. Kunai can be used both as ranged and melee weapons. Shuriken are good only in range, but they are easier and lighter. Senbon are the most difficult but the most useful and dangerous, if used right. After that, I tuned him out a bit, only keeping an ear open just in case. I would need to write down everything that I could when I arrived at the apartment that night. I needed to save as much information as I could, even if this was an AU of some sort, or if my merry presence changed everything. Some information could be useful. I couldn't turn down anything in my situation. I couldn't plan much more than that. Get to know Konoha and the Naruto world. Get stronger in order to survive future attacks wars. Simple but effective, or at least I hoped so. Let's go to the practice targets to start with your Shuriken Jutsu practice, and it had arrived at last. The moment I dreaded, I was sure I couldn't hit a target with a kunai, a shuriken or kami forbid, a senbon, to save my life. That wasn't even counting that I was still getting used to actually having a body again. This was going to be embarrassing. As it turned out, everyone sucked. Well, everyone that wasn't in the main cast. Naruto sucked too, but he didn't have anyone to teach him. He would get there. As would I if I got my way. After all, I thought while grinning. Nerfed or not, the gamer ability is the gamer ability. And to prove that point, there was a screen in front of me. New skill acquired, Shuriken Jutsu. New skill tree branch unlocked, Shuriken throwing passive, level 1. New skill tree branch unlocked, kunai throwing passive, level 1. New skill tree branch unlocked, senbon throwing passive, level 1. That had been a pleasant surprise. What wasn't so pleasant was the meager 10% chance of hitting the target that each of them gave me with their respective weapons, and that was on a stationary target. The fact that the other students sucked too would help me in that regard. If all students could do this kind of things already, it would have been bad for me. That would have been enough to raise some flags that I didn't want appearing anytime soon. Back to the skills though, the skill tree thing had been a surprise. Once I opened the skills screen, everything made a little more sense. Instead of as a list, skills appeared according to their skill trees extending to the right. I only had to think about a particular skill and it would show me the details. So far, the only one with more than one branch or branches at all was Shuriken Jutsu. It was good to know that things like that could happen though. Ajay, your turn again, Aruka said, his tone showing no mockery whatsoever to the previous student lack of skill or mind for that matter. Taking a deep breath in and relishing in how amazing it felt to be able to do so again, I stepped forward to embarrass myself once again. Even with that, I tried to follow the technique the clan heirs had used. I tried to follow Ruka's instructions, and I tried my best. I had read about that in certain gamer fanfics. The fact that some became so overconfident in the system that they forgot that it was a real world where they lived. I couldn't let that happen to me. Because my world was less game than most of those. If I made a mistake, I could get myself killed pretty quickly. That wouldn't happen. I was alive again. I wouldn't throw my life out the window. I looked at my results. 3 shuriken and 1 kunai were embedded in the targets, not anywhere near the specific spots we were supposed to aim for, but I had hit the targets, and 4 times out 20. That was better than the game's percentage. As for senbon, we wouldn't be using them for practice in the academy until later, and even then, we had to specifically ask for it. I walked back to the class, swelling in pride. Excitement rushed through my veins. Everything had been wonderful since I appeared here. Even the annoying nerfed game in the air. I hope the Naruto don't hit me a strike. Troublesome situation were awesome. It felt so amazing to be and feel alive again. I couldn't wait for my turn again. I would beat the percentage again. I was sure of it. And I did it. When my turn came, 2 Shuriken and 2 kunai hit the target. 1 Shuriken even came close to one of the circles on the target. I went back to the group while someone else took their turn. I wasn't paying attention to the others though. I was thinking to myself, Shuriken throwing has gone up a level. And as that new notification appeared in front of me, I came up with my Nindo. Live life to the fullest. I'm so lucky I found another orphan to follow instead of Naruto. My original plan to follow the orange-clad kid back to the building had been too naive. I had forgotten about the Jinchuriki's tendency to prank, which was a stupid mistake for anyone remotely aware of the series. If I had gone through with my plan to follow him, not only would I have been dragged all around the village, but I would have most probably lost him at some point during one of his escapes. As it was, I was fortunate enough to hear a pair of orphans talking about going back to the building, and so I followed them from a distance. This had the advantage of earning me a new skill that would be dead useful in my shinobi career. Stealth, active, level 1. Hides your presence according to the level of the skill and the awareness level of others. Consumption, 110 energy points per second. If I could get it to a higher level, that is, because, as it was, it wouldn't be useful for shit. 10 seconds wasn't nearly long enough, and level 1 sure as hell wouldn't hide from anything, so I would have to grind the shit out of that skill. The problem was that I came to realize as I spent my energy points in stealth while following my unaware guides, EP's regeneration rate was complete shit. It was official. The game hated my guts. The silver lining of all this was that energy points didn't seem to equal my stamina. I had spent them until I only had 10 left, and I didn't feel any different. A little while later, when I regenerated 2 more points, I spent 10 more with stealth, and I still didn't feel anything. Conclusion. Energy points were a source for skills that didn't affect me in the slightest. It was a relief, really. Once I was inside the apartment, which was exactly as Naruto's was in the show, with 1 kitchen dining room, 1 bathroom, and 1 bedroom, I had taken some time to see what the rate of regeneration was. The result, after doing some math, was roughly 2 points every 10 minutes, which was shit. Let me tell you, I prayed to every god I was aware of, fictional or not, that it at least was 2% and not just flat 2, because that would be too much for my poor heart. That deduction made sense though, as after some math, I came to the conclusion that my energy points would regenerate completely after roughly 8 hours if it was 2%. That was a reasonable enough time to recover energy if I was exhausted. It sucked, but it was reasonable. I just needed to find a way to increase the regeneration, the total amount, or decrease the consumption, or hopefully do all that at the same time. Once I was done crying, almost literally, over this stupidly nerfed game, I started cooking something to eat. Not eating lunch had been killing me all day. Fortunately for me, there was some food in the fridge for me to whip something edible up. I would have to buy something soon though. I received another possibly useful skill after this. Cooking, level 1. Improves the quality of cooked goods by 10%. It wasn't much, but I held hope that I would be able to get something out of it in the long run. If I got some energy points with a meal, that would make me pretty happy at this point. I wasn't enough of a dreamer to wish for static points after receiving disappointment after disappointment. I had come to expect the game to dash my hopes. Have I jinxed it? Fuck. Once I was full, I got my notebook Eiji's diary out and started writing everything I could remember of the series, especially the characters and their skills. The world could be an AU or the plot change a lot just by me existing in it, but there were a lot of chances that the characters' skills would stay relatively the same. That was my only reassurance. I tried to concentrate in everyone from outside Konoha first, as it was more likely I would face those first. Soon, I realized a little problem. I didn't remember shit. I had never been a die-dyed fan of Naruto. I liked it well enough, but I had read it only once and everything else came from fanfics, which were a poor source of information at best. There was also the fact that if this was the anime world instead of the manga, I was even more screwed. I had only watched the anime before Shippuden, and I hadn't even watched all of it. I had some information on what could be considered the most important ones, though. The Buza. Haku, Orochimaru, was a tricky one because he was so high level that he probably hadn't showed a lot on screen. The Sound Shinobi, both the Chunin exams ones and the Sound 4+ Kimaro Kabuto and his team, which I had to make some serious effort to remember. The Sand siblings. I found that I didn't remember shit from the other missions that had gone on during the anime, only that they existed and some random fact here and there. There was something about a meteorite or star having a strange chakra, for example. Something like that. From Shippuden, I could only remember the Akatsuki members and Zetsu was a mystery. For some reason, I didn't remember shit about the character. I had probably not paid too much attention. After a frustrated hour, I decided to leave it be. I would try to squeeze more information later. As a way to prevent a headache that I knew was coming my way and to possibly gain a useful skill, I decided to sit on the floor with my legs crossed and close my eyes. Then I proceeded to try and meditate. Or more specifically, try to clear my head of as many random thoughts as I could. It was easier said than done though, and I didn't have too much success. But I did calm down a bit. Some long but relaxed minutes later, I opened my eyes to another screen. New skill acquired. Meditation. Level 1. Opening it for more details, I got sight of this.
Meditation. Active. Level 1.
Increases the recovery rate of energy points and chakra points by 5% while active. You can't move while using this skill. Well, depending on how high I could get that percentage, this could be a pretty useful skill. Pushing that aside, I started considering what my best bet would be in order to get powerful in the possible 2 years that I had before canon. My first thought was the same that it usually was in fanfics. Chakra control. Starting to work in my chakra control right now would do wonders to improve my strength. especially considering that I had small chakra pool, or I thought so, as I didn't have any way of actually confirming that what I had was small. It would also help with pretty much any path that I decided to follow that wasn't a taijutsu specialist. Soon I thought of a problem though. I was an orphan. How was I supposed to explain that I had knowledge of the chakra control exercises all the way up to water walking? In the show, not even Sakura had known when Kakashi taught them, or at least that's what I remembered. So, how had an orphan that had literally no one to teach him found out? I couldn't very well expect them to believe that I had come up with them myself. No one would believe it, and even if they did, I didn't have the confidence to be able to maintain the facade of a prodigy of that stature even with some foreknowledge. No, it was better to work with what someone in my position had knowledge of. The only remotely suspicious skill that I had right now was meditation, and that wouldn't be too difficult to explain in my opinion. Furthermore, getting what I had to high enough levels would take enough time. I had time and I wasn't Naruto. I didn't need to worry myself with flashy jutsus, at least not for some time. With that decision made, I looked at the clock and saw that I had a few hours before I needed to go to bed. Sitting down, I activated meditation again with a thought. While the skill was active, I considered my options for the future. Not being from a clan sucked as I wouldn't have any outside help for my development, but it was the price of not looking suspicious for any family members, so I would have to deal with it. As far as I knew, all Academy students, without any background, came out with only the basic skills and the Academy 3 jutsu, if Sakura's skill set was to be believed. Body replacement, transformation, and basic clone jutsu. The thought of only having that in my arsenal was a depressing one. However, I soon realized that it wasn't too bad though. I wasn't going to look like a main character at all, but I could definitely do something with those 3. It would depend though, on how far the game let me improve them with levels. In the worst case scenario, I would have to work especially hard on my taijutsu until I made genin and got someone to teach me some more advanced jutsu. It would suck, but it was my only option as of that moment. On second thought, it wouldn't be too bad. Lee and Guy were pretty cool once you got past the outfit and their quirky personalities. After those thoughts, I decided to just focus on meditating. I wasn't quite sure if putting more effort in the skills affected their grow, but I could try. I didn't have anything better to do at the moment anyway. I had had enough thinking for a day. As a way to clear my head, I decided to simply feel. After so long being ill, and especially after the void, letting myself feel my own body, the clothes against my skin, the floor beneath me, and the air passing through my nose and mouth, it just felt amazing. So I relished in the feelings that I had almost forgotten. There was a surprise for me though. Quickly I started to feel something else, aside from air and blood flowing inside my body. It was difficult to describe, but once I got the feeling of it, I didn't want to let go. I kept my mind focused on it. It felt somewhat warm, but at the same time I felt the hairs on my body stand. It felt amazing. I couldn't quite describe it any other way. Soon, I had to end meditation though. I didn't want to go to sleep too late. The academy was my only source of training right now. I wasn't going to waste it. Meditation has gone up a level. Nice, I thought with a smile. I didn't know how long ago it had leveled up though. I could only hope it hadn't taken me a whole hour to do so. I didn't want to think how long it would take on the higher level. Taking a deep breath in, I looked at the clock and confirmed that I still had time. I didn't want to continue meditating though. I could easily spend too much time doing so and it would get late. I really didn't want to confirm if I needed sleep right now. Considering that I needed food, it was almost certain that sleep was a must too. I decided it was better to do something else, so I was sitting at the table with my notebook out and drawing a map from the academy to the building, which, maybe not surprisingly, was pretty close. It had sense when you thought that it was a building used for the orphan shinobi program. As such, I was finished pretty quickly, so I decided to continue detailing as much as I could remember. The normal buildings were dull. The shops were left blank. Once I confirmed what type of shops they were, I would differentiate them. Overall, it was a half-decent map, if I do say so myself. Better than I thought it would be, definitely. New skill acquired, cartography, level 1. I grinned. That was what I was waiting for. Cartography, level 1. Improves the quality of maps drawn by 5%. As everything so far, let's hope it gets good enough with levels. I thought dismissively. I wonder if mapping all Konoha will get this to max level, or I'll need more. Entered that thought, I paused for a few seconds before sighing. I wonder if quests are more difficult to get than that, or does this game not have them in the first place? That would suck. What about dungeons? Being pretty sure that what I had felt while meditating was chakra, I set myself up to try and replicate the original gamer's instant dungeon skill. I got nothing. And yes, I did check to see if I was doing things right, and as the game showed me, I had used chakra while messing around. With a resigned sigh, I accepted that my game didn't have artificial dungeons, probably wouldn't have natural ones either. So far, the game seemed to work with an as realistic as possible while still being a game type of logic. It sucked. With those depressing thoughts, I went to bed for the first time after coming to this world. I drowned myself in the feeling of being alive once again before falling asleep. Run! The next week was spent much the same as my first day in the Naruto world. I went to classes using running, had something for lunch that I usually prepared beforehand, continued classes, used stealth while going back to the apartment, and then used meditation once I got there. I tried to use stealth while actually trying to be stealthy, just in case some ninja saw something suspicious if I used just the skill in the middle of the street. I had also started to explore the area around the apartment and the academy, especially when I had time during the lunch break. It was a relaxing week, especially considering that the first few days I had been scared of my own shadow, thinking someone would catch something strange about me and find out about everything. Realizing that I wasn't going to be killed in my sleep didn't help me much though. Training at all hours had started to take a toll on me. I was annoyed most of the time, and meditation had started to get difficult. Soon I found myself wanting to annoy Sakura just to get a punch to the face when I noticed that I was stupid. I had decided that my Nindo was love life to the fullest, and here I was wasting every minute I had training like a madman. That's when realization hit me. Surviving wasn't the same as living. So, it was with a new mindset that I had gone to the academy on my second week as Eiji Sato. That made me be quite restless as Iruka explained to us the differences between the elemental nations. It seemed that most of those fanfics that seemed to believe that the academy only focused on history were wrong. It also contradicted canon where the students didn't seem to know shit about the other countries. At least, that's what I remembered. Maybe it had been just Naruto that didn't know. I was practically bouncing on my seat until Sensei finally decided that it was time for our physical training. Grinning from ear to ear, I mentally called for my status screen. Eiji Sato. Title, Academy Student. Energy points, 100. Chakra points, Strength. Dexterity. Constitution. Chakra. Chakra control. It hadn't improved a lot, I'll admit. Physical conditioning was doing its job, albeit slowly. Then I did another mental call. Running. Active at level 4. When used, increases the speed of the user while running by 40%. Consumption 9 energy points per second. This was the reason for me deciding to have some fun. Running seemed to level up both by use and by me simply running without actually using the skill. That was God sent, really. I was especially glad about the drop on the consumption that it received at level 4. I had hopes that the skill would level all the way up to 40, and it would become free. Not to mention that the 400% of my running speed would be great. Now, back to my plan to have fun. I was going to use the skill right from the start of the laps. Hopefully it would give me enough advantage over Sasuke, Naruto, and Kiba to finish the laps first. Now, people must be thinking, don't be an idiot, that change will give you away, and I would say, probably with a shrug. However, I couldn't care. If I lived with the fear of using any of my skills, then what good was having them? I was also counting on everyone seeing it, kind of like my little stunt during my first day where I started pretty well. This had nothing to do with Kiba bothering me the whole week about how I had gone back to being a weakling. No, it wasn't that at all. I swear. Start, Iruka said calmly, and I mentally activated running. Running was my favorite skill. Not even the feeling of chakra flowing through my pathways compared to the rush of blood in the wind against my body that I felt as I forced my legs to do their very best. Kiba's confused what? Behind me was just the icing of the cake. Sadly, the rush weakened after 13 seconds and the 3 speed powerhouses passed by me eventually. I gave a long string of mental curses as I put my hands on my knees once we had finished the laps, while my lungs tried desperately to catch my breath. Almost there, weakling, said a smirking Kiba much to my annoyance. That was so cool though, added an apparently amazed Naruto. You were so fast at the start. How did you do it? Was it a jutsu? He asked, getting right into my mortal space. Can you teach me? It's not a jutsu, I said simply. It was uncomfortable to have him so close to me. I had been a loner for the last week, and it had been who knew how long I had actually interacted with someone. The disappointed blonde's shoulders slumped as he stepped back. I'll beat you. Just you wait. Dog breath. Naruto snorted at that. What? The annoyed Inuzuka grabbed me by my collar and pulled me towards him. Iruka-sensei chose that moment to clear his throat, looking clearly unamused. Taijutsu, spars. Don't start until after the first month, boys, he said simply, while raising an eyebrow at Kiba, who let me go. Just a few weeks, weakling, said a smirking Inuzuka. I gulped, knowing that he would surely destroy me in a taijutsu spar. It was one of his hearse points after all. I didn't need to check his stats to know. Not that I could, as I hadn't been able to get the observed skill either. Let's start with the physical conditioning, shall we? Announced Iruka, while clapping. Sighing at the situation I had gotten myself into, just for some fun, I dropped to the floor and started with the push-ups. Halfway through the exercises, I received a notification. Physical conditioning has gone up a level, which resulted in this. Physical conditioning passive, level 4. Improves the rate at which your strength and constitution increase during training by 20%. Constitution has gone up a level. Nice. This was especially nice because it confirmed a theory of mine. Constitution seemed to level up by both running and the exercises, while strength only leveled up during the exercises. The extra 20 energy points and the extra space in the inventory were nice too. Yeah, the last one had been a relief. I had been worried that they were just 5 until Constitution leveled up. Once Sensei announced the lunch break, everyone started groaning as they stood up to go eat something and try to recover energies. Everyone except the stamina freak, with an oversized rabbit fox in the gut. Great, I can finally go to Ichiraku Ramen, Naruto said, extending his arms to the sky. The worst part was that he always said it like it had been a long time since he had had gone, and I do mean always. Who wants to taste the food of the gods? That question popped up sometimes too, although no one ever answered. Yeah, why not? I said tiredly while sitting on the ground and resting my arms on my knees. Suddenly, a lot of eyes turned to me, making me feel pretty uncomfortable. A lot of them seemed confused, but the best reaction was Naruto's own. He was openly gaping at me. I suppressed a chuckle while I stood up and dusted my pants. Now, where do we find this food of the gods? I asked casually, and that seemed to snap him out of it. Ha, just follow me. I'll guide you to the heavenly broth and the divine noodles. Believe it, he said, taking my arm and literally dragging me out of the school. I couldn't help but nin as my legs tried to keep up with the hyperactive blonde. Live life to the fullest indeed, I thought amusedly. Yes, I had decided that to hell with the Hokage, Danzo, and Naruto's probable Anbu and root guards. If befriending Naruto caused any type of backlash that wasn't civilian-based towards me, then this village was truly messed up. In a way, that was even more reason to do it. Naruto was an idiot, but he didn't deserve to be treated like a monster, especially considering that half the reason for him to be like that was because he was treated as a demon. Halfway through our journey towards Ichiraku, though, Naruto let go of my arm and reduced his speed considerably. When I turned to look at him, I caught him looking around nervously. Following his gaze, I saw that several people were looking at us with contempt written all over their faces. I tried to suppress my annoyance as I continued walking with him with my head high, especially because he had seen me looking around too. So, should I order something in specific once we get there? I asked, not knowing how to start a conversation with him. His eyes widened, clearly surprised by what I didn't know, but I could guess, and it didn't make me happy at all. That would be miso ramen. It's the best. Believe it, he said with his iconic wide grin before frowning in thought. But they are all amazing. Honestly, how can you to compare them? He said, as if I had committed heresy. Sorry, my mistake. I deadpanned at him and he nodded as if accepting my apology. I shook my head at him. Oi, I decided to try again, with something different. How can you run like that? Trying to keep up with you, Kiba, and Sasuke is a real pain. He just laughed, amusedly. Don't know, I just don't get tired so easily. I don't get how you can't run like that. I deadpanned again at that answer. Of course, the stamina freak would like that. Seeing him scratching the back of his head, I sighed. He was as awkward about this as me, it seemed. Fortunately for both of us, we made it to the stand at that moment. I'm here, Ayame Nichan. Kyuchi-ji-san, a bowl of miso ramen, and keep them coming. The blonde announced instantly after taking his seat. Welcome, Naruto. Coming up, shouted Kyuchi from the back of the shop. How have you been, Naruto-kun? Asked a curious Ayame before I took my seat next to Naruto. Welcome. I don't believe we've seen you here, she said, with Brit smile. That smile alone must negate a lot of the bad reputation Naruto involuntarily gave them. It looked that effective to me. Ejisato. I introduced myself. And no, it's my first time coming. I was curious about how good the place Naruto has been singing praises since forever actually was. I said a smirk. I'll have a bowl of miso ramen too. Expert's advice. I added, signaling to the blonde that was once again scratching the back of his neck with an awkward grin. I asked if anyone wanted to come and he decided to take my offer. Naruto said after Ayame gave him a questioning gaze. Well, we have to live up to the praise then. You heard that, Dad? She asked the last part, a little more loudly. A bowl of miso ramen for Naruto's friend, coming up. Kyuchi said, and I saw Naruto freeze next to me. You never did answer my question, Naruto-kun. The waitress pointed out quickly, probably trying to keep the blonde from being too nervous. He snapped out of it pretty quickly.
I've been great, he said, beaming at her. That was a lie, if I ever saw one. The flash on Ayame's eyes told me she knew as much. The academy is as much a pain as ever, though.
What do you mean? I asked, raising an eyebrow, making them turn to me. You sleep during all the theory classes. You ace the physical parts, and you aren't too bad with Shuriken Jutsu, I said, putting up a finger for each point. Hiruka-sensei doesn't let me sleep that much, he grumbled. I exchanged a look with Ayame at that. I still wonder how you passed last year with that work ethic, I said, shaking my head while the waitress giggled. Did you come just to be mean? He all but shouted. I tensed up. It seemed that I had struck a nerve. I'm going to be Hokage. Just you wait, and everyone will respect me. This time he did shout. I just looked at him, thinking how much of that was his desire, and how much was just him trying to cheer himself up. No. I continued looking at him. Is that so? I simply asked. He seemed kind of taken aback by my reaction. He expected me to laugh, I guessed. You can laugh if you want. It'll happen, and you'll see. Believe it, he said resolutely before turning his attention to the bowls of ramen that Ayame placed in front of us. Then I hope you pay your jonin well. Got him, I said amusedly as I picked up the chopsticks. Thank Kami that I had practiced at the apartment. Eating with those things had been a true pain at the start. I was slowly getting used to it. Fortunately, after tasting it, I turned to Naruto once more. Wow, you weren't joking. This is amazing. Thank you, Eiji-kun, Ayame said, beaming at me, but my attention was on the blonde. He was kind of choking on his ramen thing that I thought was impossible possible. Once he could breathe again, he turned to me. You want to be a jonin? He asked. His tone and expression were strange, though. That's the plan, I said, grinning at him. That is so lame. You got a problem with me, Goal? I said, my eyebrow twitching in annoyance. Yes, your dream is lame. Honestly, there's nothing special about being Jonin, he said, moving his arms around as if to make his point. You have to dream bigger, he exclaimed, straining his arms wide, like Jonin Commander or Anbu Captain. Those are some cool dreams, believe it, he said, grinning from ear to ear. Not Hokage, though. I would hate to ruin your dream, he added, before laughing. Something bigger, huh? I thought, as we both turned back to our meals. From the corner of my eye, I saw Naruto finish his first bowl while I had just started mine. I snorted at that. Are you using the famous talk jutsu on me? Naruto? I thought, because it seemed like it. Just by listening to him, it sparked something in me. That dreamer attitude seemed to toward me to dream, too. I idly wondered if this is how everyone in the show felt after Naruto's speeches, but that attitude felt refreshing. Love life to the fullest, wasn't it? Well then, I said as I finished my bowl. Naruto turned his eyes towards me as he swallowed from his fifth bowl. If you are going to be the next Hokage, then I'm going to be the next Shinobi no Kami. I grinned at him. Haha, that's more like it, he laughed. Another one, please. Ayami Nichan. Another one for me. We'll need that energy if we want to make our dreams true. Haha, believe it. Are you sure? Naruto, for the third time. Yes, I'm sure. She will just continue hitting you. Just give her some space, I said exasperatedly. I had spent the rest of our time after the meal telling Naruto to let Sakura be. I was sure, or at least hoped, that the pink-haired girl wouldn't be that bad once he stopped pestering her. Annoying her until she gives you a chance won't work. Okay, he said, looking down. I sighed. I heard you are good pranking people, I said, trying to keep a smirk as he perked up instantly. I'm not good, he said in a low voice. I'm the best, believe it, he said, giving me a big grin and a peace sign. I chuckled. So, that should mean you are good sneaking around, I whispered, as if I didn't want others to hear. He nodded quickly, with a serious face. Do you think you can teach me? As Shinobi, we'll need that particular skill. I had this idea just now. Would having instruction affect the levels of the skills? I can do that, but you have to help me with my pranks, he said, grinning at me. I hesitated. I didn't want to become undesirable number 2. To hell with it. Stealth training for the win. I just hoped my theory was right. Deal! He swung an arm around my shoulders and started shaking me. We are going to be great friends, AG, he exclaimed, and couldn't stop an amused half-smile. Of course, good man, I said. Then he chuckled shyly. He obviously wasn't used to people taking him even half seriously. By that time, we had arrived at the classroom. God-o-me, what a joke! Ha ha ha. We stopped walking as Kiba's voice reached us. He is better than you, weakling, but he is still not good at all, he pointed out with a smirk. Careful who you are mocking, Kiba, Naruto said, still grinning. You are talking with the future Shinobi no Kami. Believe it, he said, pointing at me. I just shook his head at him while Kiba couldn't even retort because of the fit of laughter he was in. Ignore him, Naruto. Dogs are attention seekers like that. I smirked at the blonde that let out a laugh at that. Yeah, you're right, Naruto said, taking his seat. I would shut my mouth if I were you, weakling. Kiba threatened, not pleased at all with my comeback. I just looked for my things and took them to the seat next to Naruto. Whatever you say, dog breath. I waved my hand in the air. I heard a growl, but it was interrupted by Iruka-sensei coming in. Let's go outside then, shall we? He said, and we did. Meanwhile, I looked at the screen I had summoned this time. Shuriken Jutsu. Shuriken, throwing, level 4. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a shuriken by 40%. Kunai throwing, level 3. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a kunai by 30%. Senbon throwing, level 1. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a senbon by 10%. Yeah, I had been progressing well enough in target practice. I just hoped it was better in this world than it was in canon, where you either were a ninjutsu specialist or you were cannon fodder. People like Guy aside, obviously. I blinked in confusion. Aruka had stopped in the open area where we usually did the physical conditioning. Today, we'll start with some taijutsu training to prepare you for the spars that we'll start having in a few weeks, he said. I gulped and decided to turn serious mode on. I wasn't going to get my ass handed to me by Kiba if I could help it. For some reason, he had me in his shit list ever since the first day. I wondered if it had something to do with my little running stunt back then. Anyway, I wasn't going to be bullied. I hadn't been reincarnated or whatever, just to be the guy everyone picked on. So, as I copied Iruka-sensei's movement as he explained the katas, I also started planning a new training routine. I would use my free time once the academy finished to train more with physical conditioning and the taijutsu skill that I was sure to... New skill acquired. Basic taijutsu. Level 1. There it was. It was surprising, though, that I was just taijutsu and not the particular style, basic Konoha style. Who would have guessed that name? Anyway, I wasn't going to complain. Reading the description, though, was a bit disappointing. It didn't give any real buffs or anything. I'd hoped to get a little boost even if it needed energy. But no, there was nothing except the increase in my skill according to level, kind of like the stealth skill. Here's hoping that there's something like that at a higher level. Shaking my head to brush those thoughts aside, I concentrated in the class. I would need to know how to practice the katas at home. It would have been better if I could practice with Naruto or something like that, but we didn't have the space for that in the building. It was a shame, really, but I would have to make do with classes and training by myself. Maybe I could get a wooden post to practice on. Could I even install that on the apartment? Things to check later. Unfortunately for me, the classes ended without me being able to gain another level in taijutsu, but that would change soon. I had 3 weeks until we started having spars. I had to bring it and my physical stats to a good enough level so that Kiba wouldn't beat me, which sucked, because I was sure he was the best taijutsu user in the class, aside from Sasuke and maybe Choji, and Hinata if we were having spars between genders. The last two didn't worry me too much though. They were too gentle to truly dominate in a spar. Kiba and Sasuke were my competition. Naruto was a bit of a wild card. He had strength and stamina, but he didn't have technique at all, or at least he was portrayed like that. I better be on the safe side and put him up there in the list too. Shino too. Shit, I was truly a weakling. Eiji, do you want to go pranking? The voice of the wild card interrupted my thoughts. Sorry, Naruto, I said, and I was truly apologetic. I had just made plans with him, but I really wanted to beat Kiba. Kiba has been getting on my nerves lately. I want to beat him when we start having spars, I explained. So I'll head home and train some more.
Oh, his grin faded a little before he got a hold of himself. I felt terrible. Then we'll start after you get there. He gave me a peace sign.
Believe it, I replied, to which his grin turned a bit more genuine. I gave him a half smile. See you tomorrow, Naruto. Try to study something, I said, at him.
I have better things to do, believe it.
I just shook my head at him before my expression turned serious, activating stealth to spend the recovered energy. I made my way to the apartment. I could almost hear the training montage music in the background. So, there I was. 3 weeks since my friendship with main protagonist Kun started. I had indulged him and gone pranking a couple of times during the weekends. It was a good way to distract myself from all the training I was doing. I didn't want to burn myself out, after all, as a result of our little escapades and what little I could do in my way back home. Stealth had improved a lot. Stealth. Active. Level 8. Hide your presence according to the level of the skill and the awareness level of others. Consumption. 8 energy points per second. Having someone to teach me definitely made the difference. Even though I was barely able to train it compared with the others, it had progressed nicely, and that it had the same reduction on the energy cost every 4 levels that running seemed to have was nice too. Talking about running. Running active level 10. When used, increases the speed of the user while running by 100%. Consumption, 8 energy points per second. I was so damn proud of that skill. Sensei had been truly pleased with my progress and the speed of my initial sprint, as he called it, but the pride came from something completely different. I was slowly catching up to the speed demons as my stats and skill progressed. I was starting to get on Kiba's nerves. He had it coming the mangy mutt, and now that I mentioned my stats, Eiji Sato. Title, Academy Student. Energy points, 200. Chakra points, Strength, 9. Dexterity, Constitution, Chakra. Chakra control. Yes, physical conditioning's effects were starting to show, and strength and constitution were starting to get ahead of dexterity. I didn't like it much, really. I would have preferred for all my stats to be the same level. But there's nothing I could do. It would only get worse with physical conditioning like this. Physical conditioning, passive, level 10. Improves the rate at which your strength and constitution increase during training by 50%. Now, many must be thinking, wow, how did you get your chakra to level up? And the truth is, I don't really know. Just a few days ago, I was using meditation to organize my head a bit and go over the theoretical classes, or that was the idea. But I had slowly started to get a better feeling of my chakra somehow, and I latched onto it. Carefully, I tried to draw it towards me, even though it was inside me, and then it felt like a dam breaking. A rush of energy ran through my body, and the feeling that usually made me feel warm and my hair stand intensified. I felt a smile involuntarily take over my face, just by how amazing it felt. When I opened my eyes, I received a pleasant surprise. Meditation has gone up a level. You have unlocked your chakra. Schilsplacht was my first thought. Blinking rapidly, I summoned my status screen. Apparently, my chakra was equivalent to my lowest physical stat for some reason. I would have to research that. For the moment, I made a mental note to check the library that I was sure was somewhere and see what I could find, not only on chakra, but in everything else I could possibly need. Oh, and before I forgot, I decided to check meditation just in case. Meditation, active, level 5. Increases the recovery rate of energy points and chakra points by 25% when active. Now, onto the good stuff. My true shinobi skills aside from stealth, Shuriken jutsu skills were starting to be a pain to level. The last level of Shuriken throwing had taken me the whole last week to get, and I was still waiting for the kunai level that I was sure was around the corner. I had knowing it would happen eventually, but it was still annoying to be so limited. Shuriken jutsu. Shuriken throwing, level 7. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a shuriken by 70%. Kunai. Throwing, level 6. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a kunai by 60%. Senbon throwing, level 1. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a senbon by 10%. Still, 60-70% was pretty good. Good enough to earn me nice comments from Aruka sensei. I dreaded how difficult it would get to hit moving targets though. Anyway, onto taijutsu. I seriously hopped it was good enough because even if I didn't get paired against Kiba in the first taijutsu spar, it would happen soon enough. And I doubted I would get another level before I got to fight against him. Basic taijutsu, level 7. increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. If that level represented the same skill that Shuriken throwing gave me on the same level, then it wasn't that impressive, really. Not when you thought that the mutt would probably have been trained all his life by his clan. That was known for their taijutsu aside from their ninken. With some luck, my stats would be higher than his. Yeah, nah, I was screwed. So to distract myself, why not look at the rest of my skills? Cooking level 5 improves the quality of cooked goods by 50%. Cartography level 5 improves the quality of maps drawn by 25%. Yep, they look nice. The food I prepared was starting to get good. I had even gotten Naruto to eat some of my food for lunch instead of going to Ichiraku's. Can you imagine? I was truly moved. That's the power of friendship right there. Kiba was going to kick my ass though. Oh well, I could only hope I would get stronger than him eventually. I didn't fancy the rest of my academy life being bullied by the mutt. Now, let's start with the laps. And with the now extremely familiar call from Sensei, I activated running. By now, nobody was surprised by my speed at the starts. Naruto was convinced that it was a cool jutsu, even though Iruka had told him that there didn't seem to be any chakra involved after checking with his sensing skills. Honestly, there's no trust here. Although, it was a ninja village, so never mind. The thing is, I wanted a win today. Even if I got my ass handed to me in the taijutsu spar, I would get a win today. So, I ran with all I had as I ran out of energy points for running. Come back here, weakling. I heard behind me. Keep talking, stupid mutt. I thought to myself as I forced my legs to continue running. Just one more lap. I could do it. Even if Kiba got to beat me in taijutsu, I would still be able to hold this over him. Just a little more. And then Sasuke passed me. I started cursing in my mind. Then Naruto ran by me. The idiot even turned a little to give me a thumbs up. Someday, Naruto. Someday, I'll be able to kick your ass. Mark my words, you hyperactive knucklehead. They reached the end of the lap. I was still ahead of Kiba. I could hear the Inuzuka cursing behind me. He was close. He was so close. I finished before him, stopping abruptly and tripping over myself. Doing so, I fell to the ground. My chest moved up and down, trying desperately to give my body the oxygen it craved, my legs trembling and sore, as if admonishing me for my stupidity. With my eyes closed and my mouth forming a wide smile, I started laughing. Good job, AG! Naruto's voice reached me even though I could barely hear over the pulse of my accelerated heart rate sent to my ears. You definitely beat him, believe it. He healed. I chuckled and opened my eyes. He can start getting used to eating my dust. Naruto, I said, barely able to recover my breath. I was going to continue beating him. I was sure of it. Why? Simple. Quest complete. Finish the running exercise in 3rd place. Reward. Pod. Running level. So, I do have quests, but I can't see them? That's bullshit. My pride was replaced by annoyance for a second. However, at this point, I was already used to the game stupid system. I was just happy for the free skill level. I pulled myself up tiredly and still panting. Good job, AG. Iruka-sensei gave me a thumbs up. I looked over the class and everyone seemed pretty surprised. Those faces were worth risking the use of skills. Especially Kiba's. He looked absolutely livid, and Sasuke looked intrigued. I just hoped this wasn't one of those Sasukes that was so obsessed with power that he would start pestering me for my secrets and all that shit. I tuned everyone out when Sakura and Ino started shouting about how Sasuke was still the best. Instead, I called for the running skills description. Running active. Level 1. When used, increases the speed of the user while running by 100%. Consumption 8 energy points per second. I knew it. I just knew you would find a way to screw with me, game. I thought bitterly as I looked at the unchanged speed boost. It seemed that it wouldn't go past a 100%, but the level up meant something. I guessed I would still get the reduce in costs every 4 levels, or at least I hoped so. I paled as I realized that I would have to almost kill my legs every day from now on to keep myself in front of Kiba until my stats went up. A level or running did, and considering that the latter had just leveled, those stats points better come soon. I think that's enough resting. AG, start with the physical conditioning. Iruka said over my thoughts, and I groaned before starting with the push-ups. From the corner of my eyes, I saw a fuming Kiba that got the smile back on my face and helped motivate me. That's what you get for trying to use me for your superiority complex, mutt. Iji, let's go to Ichiraku's to celebrate, Naruto called as we finished the exercises. I chuckled tiredly. Sorry, Naruto. I apologized from where I was sitting on the ground, already taking out my meal. I'm beat after that stunt. Maybe for dinner or tomorrow, I said tiredly, munching on my sandwich. He looked at me with his grin fading before starting to scratch the back of his neck. Then, he hesitated, and I raised an eyebrow. Would you mind if I, took one of those? Your food is not that bad, he said, looking away. I gulped and took one snack to offer him. Sure, go ahead, I said, and the sandwich seemed to vanish from my hand. I blinked. Geez, I won't just take my words back, don't you? I said, shaking my head at him. He chuckled, awkwardly. I know, it's just really good, he said, grinning at me. Ichiraku, level of good? I asked, jokingly. Never, he denied immediately, crossing his arms for emphasis. That's the food of the gods you are talking about. Believe it. Sorry, but yours can't compare. Well, it got you to stay instead of going, so that has to count for something, I said, smirking. I also wanted to be with you, he blurted out. I mean, he continued quickly, seemingly getting nervous. I mean to celebrate your third place and all. I blinked before a smile appeared in my face. Thanks, Naruto. I appreciate it. I told him honestly. He was an idiot for sure, but you just couldn't hate him. That's what friends are for. Believe it, he said, as if I was the idiot. Right, thanks anyway. Goddamn. No problem, Shinobi no Kami. He gave me a peace sign and then we focused on the food again. Naruto, I started cautiously. He looked at me. Why do you like Ichiraku so much? I asked. He looked at me as if he didn't understand the question. Because it's the best, he said simply. No other reason? I pressed on. He frowned before looking at the floor. You know people don't like me much. I know you saw them, he said. I sat up with my back straight. I knew what was coming. We had never talked about how people hated him. Meant I didn't need to. After all, everywhere else is really expensive, or they won't sell me at all. His voice getting lower and lower until it was just a whisper. Naruto, I said firmly, and he looked up at me. If you give me some of your money, I'll buy food for you. I'll even bring you something of your own for lunch, I said with a half smile. He didn't return it though. You won't get into trouble because of that, he asked, unsure. Maybe, I said shrugging, but if they don't see me pranking with you, they shouldn't have a reason to give me trouble. I'll have to stop doing that though, I explained. Maybe one of the kids from our class would start telling, but I wanted to believe it wouldn't be enough to ruin the both of us, and if that happened, I would have a talk with the Hokage. As much as I dreaded that option, it was the best. I wouldn't let Naruto starve himself, and as good as Ichiraku's ramen was, it wouldn't do the blonde well to eat just that. No, he was too good a guy to be left low like that. I could risk it for a friend. I had noticed that life since I had been reincarnated was pretty dull without anyone in it. I needed friends, and as far as friends went, it was difficult to do better than Naruto Uzumaki. Even with all the drawbacks, he more than made up for them. Thanks, he said softly, looking at the sandwich in his hand, but I still think Ichiraku's the best. Believe it, he exclaimed, and I chuckled. Obviously, Naruto, I said with a smirk. Eiji Sadayu versus Shikamaru Nara. I didn't know if I wanted to laugh or cry as Iruka called our names. If Shikamaru did what I thought he was going to do, it would suck. At least I wanted to get some experience for basic taijutsu. Damn it. Do the seal of confrontation. Suppressing a sigh, I did so. I give up. The sigh escaped my lips instantly. It was soon followed by a groan. Come on. I all but shouted. Would it kill you to at least have a light spar? I complained. It's too troublesome, he said indifferently before shrugging. I facepalmed. I just knew it. Do the seal of reconciliation, said Iruka-sensei, while sweat dropping. I did so together with the Nara and we went to the side, so that the others could have their turn. Quest complete. Win your first spar. Reward. Prinsic Taijutsu level. I take that back. Thanks, Shikamaru. I thought to myself, trying to suppress a grin. Is there anything you enjoy doing? I asked Shikamaru, trying to sound annoyed. Cloud watching, he said with his usual bored tone, and I resisted the need to facepalm. Anything else? I asked. I was truly curious though. Did he have any different hobbies from canon or fanfics? That question came up sometimes when thinking about some things. After all, there were several times that made this look like an AU of sorts. Anything could be different. Shogi, he answered. Same Shikamaru, it seemed. You don't have a board here, do you? I'll be bored out of my mind, waiting for them all to finish their fights, I said. There were far too many civilians for me to care and watch all their fights. There were some clan members too, but no one really close to the canon groups. I would still watch their fights though. Maybe pick up on clan styles, weaknesses, or maybe even stances and katas. If the Uchihas could go around stealing techniques, I could try too. I have one, Shikamaru said, sitting up from where he had laid down to watch the clouds. Interested? Yeah, why not? I shrugged, and he stood up and walked inside. I followed him with my eyes. Maybe he wasn't so lazy, or maybe my group of friends would grow from now on. I smiled. Yes, being friends with a Nara may not be the smartest decision, but I would have to live here. Shikamaru was a pretty important character too. I would have to deal with him eventually. Avoiding him would only end up looking more suspicious than anything else I could do. I looked as he set up the board. Do you know how to play? He asked with a raised eyebrow. I shook my head. I know nothing. I smirked and he groaned. Okay, this is the king. He started explaining. 5 minutes and 2 very lame civilian spars later, I had a screen in front of me. Shogi, level 1. Increases your strategic thinking while playing shogi according to skill level. I grinned. I was sure the game wouldn't give me a combat equivalent for that, but it was okay. The possibility of beating a Nara in shogi sounded pretty awesome by itself. I actually feel bad for watching this fight, I commented, cringing at the sight.
I want to cheer for her, but...
Naruto tried to explain ending with just flinging his arms around. I get what you mean, Naruto, Choji said, nodding sagely. Then focus on our game, Shikamaru said with a bored tone. This is almost as sad. I feel like that civilian that sparred against Sasuke. Thanks for the compliment. Why am I playing against you? To escape boredom. Right, I sighed. With that disturbing thought in mind, I turned my attention to the board. I had started to understand why the Nara's strategic thinking was often described as difficult to describe. There was no way a mediocre writer would find the words to do their brains justice, so it was better left as beyond their comprehension, and that was the case right now. He was beyond my comprehension. The situation was quite simple. Shikamaru was beating me in a shogi match for the 10th. I stopped paying attention after the 6th, to be honest. Shogi and Naruto had joined soon afterwards, and we were watching the spars unfold. The current one, though, was embarrassing to look at. It was Sakura versus Ino, and it was a cat fight. There was no other word that would do the spar justice. I was afraid they would start ripping their clothes off. Honestly. Shogi, level 5.
Do you have plans for after classes? Shikamaru asked. I wasn't sure if he was asking me alone, or both me and Naruto. He had been making a move, so it was difficult to stow. I decided to include Naruto, just in case.
Increases your strategic thinking while playing shogi according to skill level. The skill had leveled faster than any other that I had. My best guess would be because I had played some chess in my past life and shogi was like a Japanese version of it. It didn't mean much though. I had never been good, and I was sure Shikamaru couldn't tell the difference between a complete amateur and me. There wasn't much of a difference when you played against someone like him. I was planning to go in some stealth training with Naruto. I've been kind of ignoring him as I focused on the taijutsu training, I explained, and he nodded. More like, didn't want Kiba to beat me, I said lamely, and he snorted.
Wanted to beat Kiba, huh?
He asked indifferently. Of course, he knew. Pranking, Naruto whispered loudly. I just told you, Naruto, I won't be pranking anymore. I narrowed my eyes at him, and he frowned before his eyes widened and started scratching the back of his head. Stealth training? Choji asked curiously. Anyway, Shikamaru said as he set the pieces back into place for another game. Do you want to come to my house? We can continue there if you are up for more games. I resisted the need to growl at that. At least he didn't say up for more defeats. Right, I forgot, he replied, looking away. I just sighed and made my move. Shikamaru moved instantly and a groan escaped from my throat as I saw I was screwed again. The Nara just smirked my way as I glared. I'm gonna beat you. Eventually, it'll happen. He just shrugged as if he could care less. I just hoped my skills didn't come with a level cap, or that the cap was enough to allow me to beat Naras. Otherwise, I would have to rely on my own brain, and I just knew I would never beat him with just that. Thank Ami, it ended. I exclaimed as the cringeworthy match ended. And I am not talking about my game with Shikamaru. Eiji Sato versus Hibachi Mizuno. Iruka-sensei called for me again. It seemed it was time for everyone to have second spars. I wondered if the class would have enough time to get thirds. Sure, Naruto answered, scratching the back of his head nervously, and I saw Shikamaru narrow his eyes. I shook my head at him, and his suspicious gaze turned to me. I continued playing with a neutral face, and the Nara seemed to follow my example with a bored one himself. What'd you say, Naruto? I asked as I made the first move. I couldn't just leave the blonde out. I just wouldn't feel right. If Shikamaru's parents had a AL with that, then we would just get out. I was sure Shikaku Nero was smart enough to know that Naruto wasn't a demon or a ticking bomb, or wouldn't be if he had enough support in the latter case. I had decided to wait and see as my strategy. There was no need to rush into things when I could let the opponent make the first move and possibly the first mistake. That is, unless I knew they were someone like Hinata and Choji, where they would probably be taken aback if I rushed right from the beginning. The kid, I had already forgotten his name, seemed a bit nervous as he shifted in his feet while I just stared at him without moving. Finally, he seemed to have enough as he rushed at me to throw a fist to my face. I stood in the circle in front of my opponent. He had short brown hair, almost hidden under a gray bandana and stone-colored eyes. He was wearing a beige t-shirt and gray pants with black ninja sandals. The last still seemed silly to me, but everyone used them, so I just went with it. After doing the seal of confrontation, he took his stance, and I took mine with a smirk. I had trained my ass off for these spars. There was no way this kid would beat me. I took no little amount of pride as my fist connected and sent his head back and his body to the ground. During the whole thing, my smirk had only grown as I watched while taking my stance once again. After a moment, he shakily stood up, and I waited for him. If he was a little out of it, then it was even better to wait. He would surely have a ton of openings when he tried to attack. With the smirk still on my face, I shifted my stance, leaving my left leg in front of me and my left arm extended as much as I could towards the boy. My right arm stayed firmly close to my torso. As he ran at me, I positioned my left fist so that it would point right at his face as he shortened the distance between us. My smirk widened as that little movement got the desired results. He broke his stance to avoid my fist to my left side. I shifted my left feet back so that I faced him and pulled my left arm back. After the length of my arm and my step back, it looked to the kid like a long distance had formed between us, prompting him to take another step to reach me. As he did that though, I took advantage of the motion of pulling my left arm back and send my right arm forward as a hook to his jaw. I give up, the kid said as he walked towards me with legs that seemed to be made of jelly. What? I did a double take at that. Granted, he looked like a strong wind would down him, but still. Winner, Eiji Sato, sensei said as he took notes on the spar. I blinked. That was all? Don't get me wrong. It was kinda nice. Scratch that. It was definitely nice after all that work, put on taijutsu, but at the same time, it was kind of underwhelming. I scratched my chin uncomfortably as I made my way back to the others. It was also a little disappointing that I didn't get another quest reward, but I guessed it was only for the first and maybe after I defeated someone in specific, if the game was feeling generous. That was so cool! Naruto said as he stared at me with almost literal stars in his eyes. You definitely gotta teach me that. he demanded, signaling at the circle where the spars took place. I just chuckled as Shikamaru grumbled something about loud blondes. What? I told you that I had trained for this, I said with the smirk back in my face. That was fast, Shikamaru said with a raised eyebrow. But that's so boring, whined the blonde, and I rolled my eyes before turning to the Nara. I just trained what Iruka-sensei taught us and did the physical conditioning by myself at home, I explained. You are so going to teach me, a grinning Naruto told me. Then I'll kick everyone's ass, especially Sasuke Tami's, believe it. I just shook my head at him. I also eat a lot of different things besides ramen, you know, I said, which seemed to get Choji's attention. No, I don't know that much about food, I said, embarrassed, and he nodded. Did you start a special menu for training? He asked, interestedly, and I leaned back. Because the other day my mother was telling me about, and that seemed to spark a conversation on what were the best things you could eat when you were training. I gave the Akimichi as much attention as I could while still playing with Shikamaru. Something told me I would have to work on my multitasking when dealing with all this people. Okay, now tell me, why is Naruto so nervous about going to my house? Shikamaru all but demanded as we made our way to the Nara compound. Meanwhile, Naruto and she seemed to be having a rather heated argument about what was better, barbecue or ramen. It looked like they were going to take a while too. Look around, I said cryptically, and the Nara's eyes narrowed before doing so. A minute later, he turned to me. I don't know, I lied while shrugging, but I doubt it's just because of his pranks. I also heard some people call him a demon here and there. That had actually happened, much to my displeasure. So I was safe to say it. I considered telling him that people wouldn't sell food to the blonde, but I would have to wait until I knew what his parents thought about the matter at least. Shukaku was generally cool about Naruto's condition, but I couldn't know for certain. Why does everyone look at him like that? He asked, this time. I see, Shikamaru said while biting his thumb. So, he is nervous because he thinks my parents will be like that? He continued his interrogation. At least he didn't seem offended by that. I think so. I wouldn't take it personal. I'm sure it would happen with anyone else too, I said, shrugging and giving him an apologetic smile. Troublesome. Well, that's effective security right there, I said, smirking. Yeah, he tends to be. I smirked at the lazy genius. You couldn't ask for a better friend though, I said with a smile, looking at Naruto. Shikamaru just hummed next to me. If you say so, he said, looking over to the other pair with his bored look. I couldn't help but think about how much more difficult it was to get a read out of him than others. You were here, he said, pointing to a gate with a pair of almost identical bored-looking guards. I would have wondered if they were even doing their job, but the way they twitched when Naruto came into view told me that yes, they were very much aware of their surroundings. The three of them are with me, Shikamaru said, waving at the guards, and they just hummed distractedly. I actually feel bad for watching this fight, I commented, cringing at the sight.
I want to cheer for her, but
Naruto tried to explain, ending with just flinging his arms around. I get what you mean, Naruto, Choji said, nodding sagely. Then focus on our game, Shikamaru said with a bored tone. This is almost as sad. I feel like that civilian that sparred against Sasuke. Thanks for the compliment. Why am I playing against you? To escape boredom. Right, I sighed. The situation was quite simple. Shikamaru was beating me in a shogi match for the 10th. I stopped paying attention after the 6th, to be honest. Shoji and Naruto had joined soon afterwards, and we were watching the spars unfold. The current one, though, was embarrassing to look at. It was Sakura versus Ino, and it was a cat fight. There was no other word that would do this spar justice. I was afraid they would start ripping their clothes off, honestly. With that disturbing thought in mind, I turned my attention to the board. I had started to understand why the Nara's strategic thinking was often described as difficult to describe. There was no way a mediocre writer would find the words to do their brains justice, so it was better left as beyond their comprehension, and that was the case right now. He was beyond my comprehension. Shogi, level 5. Increases your strategic thinking while playing shogi according to skill level. The skill had leveled faster than any other that I had. My best guess would be because I had played some chess in my past life and shogi was like a Japanese version of it. It didn't mean much though. I had never been good, and I was sure Shikamaru couldn't tell the difference between a complete amateur and me. There wasn't much of a difference when you played against someone like him.
Do you have plans for after classes? Shikamaru asked. I wasn't sure if he was asking me alone, or both me and Naruto. He had been making a move so it was difficult to stall. I decided to include Naruto, just in case.
I was planning to go in some stealth training with Naruto. I've been kind of ignoring him as I focused on the taijutsu training, I explained, and he nodded.
Wanted to beat Kiba, huh?
He asked, indifferently. Of course, he knew. More like, didn't want Kiba to beat me, I said lamely, and he snorted. Stealth training? Choji asked curiously. Pranking, Naruto whispered loudly. I just told you, Naruto, I won't be pranking anymore. I narrowed my eyes at him, and he frowned before his eyes widened and started scratching the back of his head. Right, I forgot, he replied, looking away. I just sighed and made my move. Shikamaru moved instantly, and a groan escaped from my throat as I saw I was screwed again. The Nara just smirked my way as I glared. I'm gonna beat you. Eventually, it'll happen. He just shrugged as if he could care less. I just hoped my skills didn't come with a level cap, or that the cap was enough to allow me to beat Naras. Otherwise, I would have to rely on my own brain, and I just knew I would never beat him with just that. Thank God it ended. I exclaimed as the cringeworthy match ended. And I am not talking about my game with Shikamaru. Anyway, Shikamaru said as he set the pieces back into place for another game, "Do you want to come to my house? We can continue there if you are up for more games." I resisted the need to growl at that. At least he didn't say up for more defeats. "What'd you say, Naruto?" I asked as I made the first move. I couldn't just leave the blonde out. I just wouldn't feel right. If Shikamaru's parents had a AL with that, then we would just get out. I was sure Shikaku Nero was smart enough to know that Naruto wasn't a demon or a ticking bomb, or wouldn't be if he had enough support in the latter case. Sure, Naruto answered, scratching the back of his head nervously, and I saw Shikamaru narrow his eyes. I shook my head at him, and his suspicious gaze turned to me. I continued playing with a neutral face, and the Nara seemed to follow my example with a bored one himself. Eiji Sato versus Hibachi Mizuno. Iruka-sensei called for me again. It seemed it was time for everyone to have second spars. I wondered if the class would have enough time to get thirds. I stood in the circle, in front of my opponent. He had short brown hair, almost hidden under a gray bandana, and stone-colored eyes. He was wearing a beige t-shirt and gray pants with black ninja sandals. The last still seemed silly to me, but everyone used them, so I just went with it. After doing the seal of confrontation, he took his stance, and I took mine with a smirk. I had trained my ass off for these spars. There was no way this kid would beat me. I had decided to wait and see as my strategy. There was no need to rush into things when I could let the opponent make the first move and possibly the first mistake. That is, unless I knew they were someone like Hinata and Shoji, where they would probably be taken aback if I rushed right from the beginning. The kid, I had already forgotten his name, seemed a bit nervous as he shifted in his feet while I just stared at him without moving. Finally, he seemed to have enough as he rushed at me to throw a fist to my face. With the smirk still on my face, I shifted my stance, leaving my left leg in front of me and my left arm extended as much as I could towards the boy. My right arm stayed firmly close to my torso. As he ran at me, I positioned my left fist so that it would point right at his face as he shortened the distance between us. My smirk widened as that little movement got the desired results. He broke his stance to avoid my fist to my left side. I shifted my left feet back so that I faced him and pulled my left arm back. After the length of my arm and my step back, it looked to the kid like a long distance had formed between us, prompting him to take another step to reach me. As he did that though, I took advantage of the motion of pulling my left arm back and send my right arm forward as a hook to his jaw. I took no little amount of pride as my fist connected and sent his head back and his body to the ground. During the whole thing, my smirk had only grown as I watched while taking my stance once again. After a moment, he shakily stood up and I waited for him. If he was a little out of it, then it was even better to wait. He would surely have a ton of openings when he tried to attack. "I give up," the kid said as he walked towards me with legs that seemed to be made of jelly. "What?" I did a double take at that. Granted, he looked like a strong wind would down him, but still. "Winner, Eiji Sato," Sensei said as he took notes on the spar. I blinked. That was all? Don't get me wrong. It was kinda nice. Scratch that. It was definitely nice after all that work, put on taijutsu, but at the same time, it was kind of underwhelming. I scratched my chin uncomfortably as I made my way back to the others. It was also a little disappointing that I didn't get another quest reward, but I guessed it was only for the first and maybe after I defeated someone in specific, if the game was feeling generous. "That was fast," Shikamaru said with a raised eyebrow. "That was so cool," Naruto said as he stared at me with almost literal stars in his eyes. "You definitely gotta teach me that," he demanded, signaling at the circle where the spars took place. I just chuckled as Shikamaru grumbled something about loud blondes. "What? I told you that I had trained for this," I said with the smirk back in my face. "You are so going to teach me," a grinning Naruto told me. "Then I'll kick everyone's ass, especially Sasuke Tami's, believe it." I just shook my head at him. "I just trained what Iruka-sensei taught us and did the physical conditioning by myself at home," I explained. "But that's so boring," whined the blonde, and I rolled my eyes before turning to the Nara. "I also eat a lot of different things besides ramen, you know," I said, which seemed to get Choji's attention. "Did you start a special menu for training?" he asked, interestedly, and I leaned back. No, I don't know that much about food," I said, embarrassed, and he nodded. "Because the other day my mother was telling me about," and that seemed to spark a conversation on what were the best things you could eat when you were training. I gave the Akimichi as much attention as I could while still playing with Shikamaru. Something told me I would have to work on my multitasking when dealing with all this people. "Okay, now tell me, why is Naruto so nervous about going to my house?" Shikamaru all but demanded as we made our way to the Nara compound. Meanwhile, Naruto and she seemed to be having a rather heated argument about what was better, barbecue or ramen. It looked like they were going to take a while too. "Look around," I said cryptically, and the Nara's eyes narrowed before doing so. A minute later, he turned to me. "Why does everyone look at him like that?" he asked this time. "I don't know," I lied while shrugging, "but I doubt it's just because of his pranks. I also heard some people call him a demon here and there. That had actually happened, much to my displeasure, so I was safe to say it. I considered telling him that people wouldn't sell food to the blonde, but I would have to wait until I knew what his parents thought about the matter at least. Shikaku was generally cool about Naruto's condition, but I couldn't know for certain." "I see," Shikamaru said while biting his thumb. "So, he is nervous because he thinks my parents will be like that?" he continued his interrogation. At least he didn't seem offended by that. "I think so," I wouldn't take it personal. I'm sure it would happen with anyone else too, I said, shrugging and giving him an apologetic smile. Troublesome. Yeah, he tends to be. I smirked at the lazy genius. You couldn't ask for a better friend though, I said with a smile, looking at Naruto. Shikamaru just hummed next to me. If you say so, he said, looking over to the other pair with his bored look. I couldn't help but think about how much more difficult it was to get a read out of him than others. You were here, he said, pointing to a gate with a pair of almost identical bored-looking guards. I would have wondered if they were even doing their job, but the way they twitched when Naruto came into view told me that yes, they were very much aware of their surroundings. The three of them are with me, Shikamaru said, waving at the guards, and they just hummed distractedly. Well, that's effective security right there, I said, smirking. Lazy asses, the both of them, he commented with a shrug. If you say so, I said, still smirking, and he narrowed his eyes at me before giving me a smirk. Welcome home, Shika. If you go to sleep right now, you know what'll happen. That was how Shikamaru's mother always received him, apparently. It was said that way at least. I just turned to him with a raised eyebrow. He groaned. Do you have to be so troublesome, woman? He grumbled. I'm not even going to sleep anyway. Like I would, oh, welcome everyone. The Nara matriarch said as she peeked over the corner and saw all of us. You didn't tell me you would bring friends, she chided. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing, he shrugged with his hands in his pockets. Anyway, we are going to the backyard, he said, and started walking. It's a pleasure to meet you, Nara-san, I said, politely bowing to her. I'm Iji Sato and Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto said while bowing awkwardly next to me, obviously not used to this kind of thing. Hello again, Yoshino-san. Choji just waved. My. Aren't you a polite pair? I'm Yoshino Nara. A pleasure to meet you too, she said sweetly, and a part of me relaxed at the fact that she didn't say anything about Naruto. Anyone that keeps Shika from taking a nap is welcome here. I sweat dropped at that and heard the younger Nara groan and mutter, troublesome woman, and just call me Yoshino. She smiled at us. Of course, thank you, Yoshino-san. She just waved her hand at me and went back to what she was doing. Let's go, Shikamaru said, guiding us through the halls. There's no hurry, Shika, I teased, and he groaned. You have been distinctly not troublesome, AG. Don't ruin it. He almost sounded serious. I just snorted and shook my head. Whoa, you have so much space, Naruto exclaimed, as he spread his arms as if to signal the size of the backyard. It was pretty big, at least if you were used to our shitty apartments. The orphan building. It would be awesome to have this much space. Wouldn't it, Eiji? He asked, turning to me. We could have practiced taijutsu together. There was something in his voice as he said the word together that made me take a mental note to search for a place to train with him in other things besides stealth. You can train here, Shikamaru said, shrugging, as we both turned to him. Just keep me out of... I'll be eternally grateful if you get Shika to train. Yoshino's voice interrupted her son. He just sighed as if resigning himself to his fate, and I chuckled. Count on us, Yoshino-san. I answered, to which she shouted a thank you. Traitor. The Nara heir grumbled. We'll play shogi, and I'll spar with Choji, or Naruto, from time to time. We can tell your mother that you participated too, and we're resting if she comes. I muttered to him, and it gave me a smirk. I like how you think. What do you say, Choji? How about a spar? Naruto asked excitedly. Poor little guy probably was ecstatic that he would be able to do something with someone else. Do I have to? The Akamichi whined. Iji will bring food for you to the academy tomorrow, offered the blonde. Oi, leave me out of this, I said nervously. I wasn't quite sure if my level 5 cooking was good enough for an Akamichi after all. They were kind of the food kings of Konoha, weren't they? Deal. Choji accepted instantly and I blanched. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be really good, just good enough and have lots of it. Shikamaru advised and I nodded weakly. Naruto gets me into a deal to have me cook more, and now I'm about to have my ass handed to me in shogi. Why did I accept your invitation? I asked defeatedly. Beats me, he said smirking, as he started playing. I sighed. It was some time later that I found myself looking at a pair of screens while walking on the street. Shogi. Level 7. Increases your strategic thinking while playing shogi, according to skill level. Basic taijutsu. Level 9. Increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. And that's how I learned that actual spars were 10 times better than just practicing the katas for taijutsu. Not that I ever doubted it, but I was surprised to have received a level on the skill even though I had just had a couple of spars with Naruto and one with Choji. The latter really needed a boost of confidence though. I hoped we could give it to him if we continued sparing him without mocking him or anything. We had tried to get Shikamaru to spar at least once, but it was a lost cause. I noticed that the Naras seemed to enjoy having someone to play shogi against a little too much. I mean, one would think that after beating me so many times he would get bored. But it seemed to do the opposite, really. I wondered how many times he had crushed people only for them to give up and stop playing with him. I wouldn't, though. My shogi level would get high enough eventually. Or at least, I wished so. Yeah, Eiji, it's too late to go to Ichiraku, so. Naruto started nervously while we walked back to our building. I sighed. If you want me to cook, just ask. Naruto, I said exasperatedly, before he grabbed my shoulder and pulled me into a one-armed hug, giving his signature smirk. You are the best, Eiji, he said. I'll pay you really well when I become Hokage. Believe it. I chuckled. You better. I shook my head. Overall, it was a nice day. I ended the laps before Kiba. I didn't get my ass handed to me in the spars, and I made a couple of new friends. It was a good day. Naruto POV. Today was awesome. I mean, just thinking about it brought a grin to my face. AJ got to beat Kiba's ass on the running laps, which was pretty nice. Then we celebrated together, and after that, we hung out with Shikamaru and Shoji. We even went to Shikamaru's house, and his mother didn't kick me out. And AJ also offered to make me food after I told him about the shops. My grin turned into a soft smile at that thought. He really was a great friend. It only added to my love for Ichiraku's really. After all, if I hadn't asked if anyone wanted to come with me, yeah, why not? Now, where do we find this food of the gods? I think I disguised my surprise pretty well back then. Who am I kidding? AJ seemed to be able to read me like an open book. It was a bit scary, how he could see right through my usual grin, like how he always accepted to go pranking with me when I was lonely, even though I tried not to show it. It was sad that we wouldn't be able to do that anymore. But I get to eat AJ's food, so that is great, I thought as I continued eating what my red-eyed friend had prepared. He had made a lot of food and had left saying that he would sit in the balcony while I finished. He liked his peace and quiet sometimes. I shook my head, focusing on the food. He wasn't Ichiraku level of good, but honestly, who was? But he was pretty good, and seemed to be improving. And also, how could I him know? He was my first friend, after all. Well, not really. He wasn't my first friend, per se, but he was the first one that hadn't left me. I frowned as I remembered all the times a friend had left me, after their parents or the matron at the orphanage had told them to stay away from me. But AJ stayed, and that was the second best thing about him. He shrugged off all the glares we got as we walked the streets. Even back then, the first day we talked, he had tried his best as we both awkwardly chatted with one another. However, the very best thing about him was that he didn't mock my dream. Hey, is that so? There was no mockery in his voice. It wasn't the fake praise that Ayami-nachan, Teichiji-san, or Gigi used either. No, he just accepted that it was my dream, and that was it. If you are going to be the next Hokage, then I'm going to be the next Shinobi no Kami. Yeah, AJ was the best. Putting aside the dishes, I made my way to the balcony to see what he was doing. Funnily enough, I found him sleeping on the floor. Suddenly, a mischievous grin grew in my face as the thought of using a marker all over his face crossed my mind. Yeah, that was a good idea. No. I froze and slowly turned to look at him. I almost let out a sigh in relief as I saw that he hadn't woken up and caught me. No. I froze again, yet this time for a completely different reason. He sounded so weak. It clashed a lot with the AJ I knew. He always sounded sure of himself. Even when he was sure that Kiba would beat him in the taijutsu spars he had, this air of confidence, as if he knew he would beat him eventually, which by the amount of training he did, I believed him. No. He moved in his sleep, and I snapped out of my thoughts. AJ, wake up! I shook him awake. I knew how scary nightmares were. He sat up straight instantly before looking around. Finally, his eyes settled on me. He blinked. I noticed that his red eyes were pretty scary in the night. Sorry, it seems I fell asleep. He apologized. If I hadn't heard him, I wouldn't have believed that this was the same voice that had sounded so scared and weak before. Don't worry. I grinned at him like usual, and he smiled at me. That seemed like a scary nightmare, though. I pointed out, and his smile vanished. Internally, I cursed myself. Having friends was difficult sometimes. Yeah, he nodded tiredly. Yeah, it was. He looked away towards the view that we got from the balcony. It's scary, isn't it? He asked, and I wasn't sure he was talking to me anymore. I looked at him in confusion before he finished the statement. Not existing is scary. That day, I found something else that made AJ awesome. He understood. Shoji's fist impacted against my forearms as I covered my chest. The Akamichi's renowned strength sent me skidding backwards while I felt my arms go numb. Once I regained a firm enough stance, I kept my eyes on my friend. Shoji was panting heavily as sweat covered his brows. Physical resistance has gone up a level. Dismissing the screen, I thought about how much it had taken Naruto and me to curb Choji's extremely gentle nature so that he could actually spar with us. Between him pulling his punches and Naruto's messy fighting style that I was still trying to improve, it had taken entirely too long for me to get the resistance skill tree. So far, I only had the physical branch, but it was sure to have some to resist the jutsu elements at the very least. I hoped so, at least. After getting the skill, I had spent the better part of the day wondering if I should find a way to grind it. I decided against that for several reasons. First of all, I wasn't masochistic enough to beat myself up just to grind the skill. I didn't even have gamer's body and mind to help keep me undamaged and sane. I liked having a modicum of sanity, thank you very much. Secondly, it only seemed to give 1% per level, so at the rate my skills leveled, I would have to receive too much damage for it to be worthwhile, something that I wasn't about to do to myself. And lastly, I doubted the shitty game would allow me to get it high enough to make myself invulnerable. It was sure to have a cap of some sort, and I would be happy if I never had to find that out. Back to my spar with Choji, though. He was completely exhausted, and my arms were covered in bruises after so much blocking, but I was ready to take him down. Both of us had put extra effort in this spar, as it was the first time we had to spar it in an actual class instead of our get-togethers at the Nara or Akamichi compound. It somehow made it even more important than those. I smirked at him, and he groaned. Shit. he said simply before I started running at him. With a last-ditch effort, he tried to attack again, but I had dragged the spar on for a reason. I had more stamina than him. All my training had made sure of that. I was also sure that if I could check his stats, his dexterity would be lower than mine. The match had been long. I had spent the entirety of it dodging to the best of my capabilities and blocking when I was unable to. I was confident in my taijutsu prowess after weeks of defeating the civilian students and the weaker clan members, but I wasn't crazy enough to get up close with Choji from the very beginning. I had made that mistake on our friendly spars, and after his change of attitude towards training, he was a beast. Now, a tired Akamichi heir wouldn't be able to touch me, and that was proved when I dodged the incoming fist before punching his side and positioning myself behind him. With a kick behind the knee, he went down and then I punched him in the jaw as he tried to turn to me. After that, I put some distance between us. While fast, my punches didn't do much damage, not against an Akamichi's physiology at least. I went back in when it was evident that he wouldn't stand back up fast enough to be a danger, and kicked him in the back, sending him to the ground. After that, I threw myself on top of him at his arm behind his back. I had him. I yield, he groaned, before Iruka called the match. With a relieved sigh, I stood up and offered Choji my hand to help him. We both did the seal of reconciliation and went back to our group. You are so annoying to fight, Eiji, he grumbled, and I chuckled tiredly. Tell that to my arms. I won't be able to train shit with them like this. I looked at said limbs and they looked as bad as they felt. I grimaced as I thought about how Haywell cooking would be with them like that. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have blocked with both arms and so much. I forgot about that as I looked at a new screen that had popped up. Quest complete. Win your first spar against a clan heir. Reward. Hunt's 3 basic taijutsu level. 1 to all physical stats. Chakra has gone up a level. Well, isn't that a nice surprise? I thought to myself as I grinned. It had been a month since the last time I had received a quest reward after all, and 2 months since I had arrived to the ninja world. It was nice to get something for free after all this time. With a simple thought, I dismissed the screen while calling for the updated ones. Basic taijutsu level 5 increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. Eiji Satu. Title, Academy Student. Energy points, 2 Chakra points, 100. Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Chakra, Chakra Control. Overall, it felt pretty badass. Yeah, the stats didn't look all that impressive, but I had it in good authority that they were, after all, I had just defeated Choji, and he was top 3 of the class as far as I was aware, right behind Sasuke and Kiba. Those 3 together with Naruto, Shino and I made the top 6 of the male side. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata made the top 3 of the female side. Unsurprisingly, the Hyuga heiress was supposedly behind the other 2, but I was sure it was just her shyness. Although, I guess the male top had changed now. Now the other was probably Sasuke, Kiba, me, Choji, Shino, and Naruto. How had the top formed when we hadn't battled one another yet? Sensei had written the list, probably so that our competitiveness would motivate us. Didn't work out with Shikamaru though. Anyway, the thing is, he had made the list based on the prowess shown after a week of spars. From then on, the places would switch only if we defeated the higher spots. With that and everything else I knew, I had tried to calculate where Sasuke and Kiba stood in the stat department. I was pretty sure neither was above the 20s in anything. Sasuke was probably an overall 17, while the Inuzuka would be a 15. I was so close to beating the dog that I could almost feel it. If the teachers decided to pit us against each other right before I reached his level after this long, I would be pissed. Not to mention that he would never let me live it down. After a week, I noticed that the teachers seemed to purposely avoid pitting the clan heirs with anyone else. They probably thought that it would be a waste to have a clan heir battle against a mere orphan or civilian. Soon, Naruto was added to the list based on mere stamina and strength, even if his technique sucked. Being the Jinchuriki probably helped, and just last week they had deemed me worthy. Apparently. Nice spar. Shikamaru commented, not even bothering to fake enthusiasm. I just rolled my eyes at him and sat down at the other side of the shogi board. It was a cool spar, Naruto explained with true enthusiasm. You were so close, Choji. A couple more punches and you would have gone down.
Thanks, Naruto. You are a real friend.
I deadpanned at him and he kept his gaze on the grateful Akimichi while ignoring me. I internally smirked. Some time ago, he would have been sputtering about not meaning it like that. He had come a long way from the awkward friendless boy I had eaten ramen with. Regretting your creation? Shikamaru asked as we started playing against each other. Never. I still don't know if he is more troublesome like this or not. I would say not, I said, not entirely convinced. While not having him constantly nervous about if we would leave him was nice, Naruto's new confidence had proved to be, as Shikamaru would say, troublesome. He wasn't outright pranking us, but he did enjoy messing with us a little. I would take that over how he was every day of the week though. While we both continued our game, I was distractedly paying attention to Naruto and Choji's conversation that seemed to jump between commenting the spars and discussing food weirdly often. I also kept an eye on the battles. While I had never actually tried to copy a style or something, I did take note of certain moves to try out later. Lately though, I had started to pay more attention to playing against Shikamaru, both because I didn't want him to think I didn't care, and because I really wanted to beat him. One can only take so many beatings before starting to take it seriously. I had even asked him to lend me some books about the game. He had happily done so with an actual smile instead of his lazy smirk. The result of all that was this. Shogi level 2 increases your strategic thinking while playing shogi according to skill level. If you were wondering, no, it wasn't nearly enough to beat Shikamaru. It had made the matches longer, but he was still stomping me without problems. I was sure his skill level would have been around the 30s or 40s. I had a long way to go. On a more cheerful note though, I had managed to continue beating Kiba in the lap runs. It had been almost painful to keep up the spree, but I managed to do so long enough to get a constitution stat, and from there it had only snowballed. Now instead of not letting Kiba beat me, I was focusing on beating Naruto and taking second place. Running active level 13. When used increases the speed of the user while running by 100%.
Consumption.
7 energy points per second.
Sniff. Beautiful, isn't it?
Running was still my favorite skill, and the one that I was most proud of. It probably had something to do with it being the most noticeably useful, because yeah, taijutsu was also pretty dope, but without it having an active effect or a percentage, it was difficult to see something about it besides the level. And while these two were great, physical conditioning, passive, level 12, improves the rate at which your strength and constitution increase during training by 60%. Stealth active, level 12, hides your presence according to the level of the skill and the awareness level of others. Consumption 7 energy points per second.
They just weren't as impressive. Not really.
Stealth was cool though. It just didn't bring the bragging rights that running did. However, the skill that was contending with running for best skills so far was Shuriken Jutsu, or its branches, I should say. Just look at these babies. Shuriken Jutsu. Shuriken throwing. Evil Knight. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a shuriken by 90%.
Kunai throwing, level.
Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a kunai by 80%.
Senbon, throwing, level 1.
Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a senbon by 10%. Almost perfect accuracy. If that wasn't cool, then I didn't know what was. I wanted to see everyone's faces when I started getting perfect shots left and right. So far, the only ones competing with my scores were Sasuke, Sakura, Ino, and surprisingly, Shikamaru. The first was practically a given. The second two had been a surprise before I reasoned that Sakura was Kunoichi of the year for a reason even if she was next to useless in the series. And she was pretty even with Ino. Shikamaru had been a real shock though. He had only said that throwing wasn't troublesome enough to deal with Iruka and his mother yelling at him. I took his word for it. As for my other skills, cartography, level 7, improves the quality of maps drawn by 35%. Meditation, active, level 10, increases the recovery rate of energy points and chakra points by 50% when active. Cooking, level 9, improves the quality of cooked goods by 90%. Cartography had kind of lagged behind as I started to hang out with Naruto, Shikamaru, and Choji more and more. I simply didn't have the time to level up so many skills. At this point, I only drew maps when I didn't feel like grinding my other skills. It was distracting and I didn't have to put as much effort as it wasn't that much of a necessity, at least for now. This only cemented my decision to wait for my chakra training though. Better to focus on the skills that I was currently using and needed. No need to take unnecessary risks. I would have a full year to train those skills, not to mention the time spent doing D-rank missions after graduation. On a side note, I was kind of disappointed that Meditation's 10th level hadn't given me anything. I had thought that as it had unlocked my chakra at level 5, it would do something at level 10. Maybe it would at a latter level. I hoped so, at least. As for cooking, I had to make food for 3 people, or 7 if you considered Naruto's and Choji's appetites. That meant that I cooked a lot, and that meant more levels. It got to the point that Choji's mother had started wanting my help when we stayed in their house until too late and had dinner there. Granted, even with the 90% improvement, I wasn't anywhere near the level of the Akimichi cooks, but I was good enough to compete with lesser restaurants. Their words, not mine. I could only assume it had something to do with me not knowing as much about cooking and just following recipes as best I could. You should focus on the game. Shikamaru's voice broke me from my musings as I noticed that I had lost another game. Sorry. Just thinking about what to do once we are out, I said as we set the board again. Watch clouds? Stealth training? We could go to my house and have something to eat. You have 3 guesses who said what, and the first 2 don't count. I sighed. Naruto. We do stealth training anyway. I raised an eyebrow at the blonde-haired boy. Well, but we could do so for longer, he said, rubbing the back of his head. After I had to stop our pranking, he had pretty much stopped his too. He preferred to hang out at one of us, it seemed. All the theories of his pranking being to draw attention were pretty much confirmed at that point. Don't get me wrong, he still did prank sometimes, especially if someone annoyed him, but not nearly as much anymore. Once he stopped his pranking, Naruto had come up with an idea for our stealth training sessions. It took him a week to get Choji and Shikamaru to come too. I had had to help him get Shikamaru to agree and his mother had been thanking us ever since. What kind of training was it? Simple. We would choose one of the chunin that worked in the academy and try to follow them without them noticing. Obviously they did. They were chunin after all, but we were getting better. How did we know that last part? Also, simple. Just last week we had started getting feedback. As teachers, they seemed to support our little extra training and had started leaving notes for us on our desks at the academy. They told us everything from when they noticed us to how to avoid such development. I had been pleasantly surprised that none of them seemed to have something against Naruto. I guessed that the Hokage had made sure that everyone was on the Jinchuriki's side in the education department. I wondered if Mizuki was a thing in this universe. I hadn't seen anyone been publicly against Naruto while inside the academy so far. It has been a while since we went to Choji's house. Shikamaru commented and I nodded. Let's go there. Then I turned to a disappointed Naruto. And we'll do extra stealth training tomorrow. How about that? He instantly perked up and nodded. I smiled. What's the fuss all about? I asked, confused, in a corridor of the academy. In front of our little group was a much larger one of seemingly older students facing a wall. They are signing for the electives. I turned at the unexpected voice to face Shino. The Aburame was standing a little apart from us, probably being on his way out himself. Electives? Naruto saved me from being the one to ask. There are specialized classes that can be taken during the last year. Only 2 per student though, from ninjutsu classes to politics. Shino explained, pushing his dark glasses up. I could almost see the stars in Naruto's eyes. A frown appeared in my face. That most certainly wasn't a canon thing. I suppressed a sigh. It was a good thing I didn't intend on following canon anyway. Let's wait. I want to see what electives we'll have, I said. Do we have to? They are optional anyway, Shikamaru complained. You know your mother will force you to choose at least one, don't you? I said with a raised eyebrow, and he groaned. Can't let a man dream, can you? He said, eyeing me in annoyance. I smirked. Man, you'll be a man when your mother stops controlling your life, I said. Can't wait, he said, looking back to the front. Isn't so good, really. We both turned to Naruto, and I put a hand on his shoulder. Sorry, Shikamaru apologized with a surprising amount of empathy in his voice. I gave him a reassuring smile. Sometimes I forgot that even though I'm technically an orphan, I wasn't the rule, but the exception. Shikamaru seemed to have the same problem. It seems to be clearing. Let's go see. Choji pointed out. It wasn't really clearing, but some were already leaving. What was important was getting Naruto's mind away from bad thoughts. I nodded at the Akimichi, and he nodded back. Shino followed us as we made our way to the board. Ninjutsu, Foing Jutsu, Jutsu, Bukijutsu. Medical training, recon and tracking, intelligence gathering, trapping, mannerisms, politics, business.
Interesting.
I thought looking over the different lists, it didn't give details which were probably told in a class before one could sign up, but only knowing the lists was interesting. I'm going to sign up for ninjutsu and I'll start kicking ass. Believe it. Naruto said excitedly. Difficult? I want to sign up for almost everything. I groaned. Intelligence gathering. Shikamaru said. I didn't comment. I remembered that the Inoshika Cho trio specialized in exactly that, so I guessed it made sense. However, I as AG didn't know if that was common knowledge, so better keep my mouth shut. I think I'll take that too, Shuji said, having gotten a pack of chips from somewhere. I blinked. I would most probably take the recon and tracking course. I barely managed not to jump, as Shino spoke from behind us. Shoji and Naruto weren't as lucky. Don't scare us like that, Naruto said, pointing at the Aburame, and I almost wanted to say something along those lines. I was here the whole time. Shino replied with a deadpan. Well, that's some stealth you got there, I commented with a smirk, and he raised an eyebrow at me. Any tips? It wasn't intentional. Who are you? Kuroko, I thought. I hummed while eyeing him. We have a special stealth exercise. Want to come with us? I'd like to see how you do when you actually want to be stealthy, I commented, and he looked in our direction for a moment. It was a little unnerving not knowing if he was looking at me or not. It could prove useful, he said impassively after a while. I turned to the others, and they didn't seem to have a problem with it. I received a couple of shrugs as response. Shano, POV. Eiji Satoru was a mystery. Why? Because he had appeared out of nowhere, or maybe it was better to say that he had been surprisingly unnoticeable until this year at the academy, and it all started with the first physical exercise, the laps. That first sprint had taken everyone by surprise. He had obviously lagged behind and ended up slightly in front of the rest of the civilian average. His Shuriken jutsu had been as terrible as expected from the civilians and orphans that didn't have any previous training in the ninja arts. All about him screamed average. But that had slowly changed. Now he stood at the top 3 in the taijutsu spars, just below the highly physical heir of the Inuzuka clan, Kiba, and the highly talented sole remaining member and heir of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke. He didn't even show signs of stopping his progress. His Shuriken jutsu had improved at astonishing rates. In 2 months, he stood now in the same level as the most skilled throwers of the class. Granted, with stationary targets, it was still difficult to measure his skill in that particular aspect, but it was still impressive when compared with others of his same situation. Like his friend Naruto, that was several steps behind him in that department, even if he beat Eiji in the laps due to his seemingly unending stamina reserves. Talking about the blonde-haired knucklehead, they had become friends relatively early in the year, and it had come as a surprise for everyone. Although, the true surprise for me was to realize that Naruto didn't have friends. I hadn't noticed until Eiji started being around the blonde that the troublemaker didn't seem to have any company. It was then that I started to pay closer attention to Eiji Sato, because I started comparing Naruto to me. I didn't know why everyone seemed to avoid the blonde like the plague, but it was a situation eerily similar to the one faced by the Aburame clan in general. I had even noticed after some observation that almost everyone seemed to eye him with contempt. It was shocking. At most my clan were looked at with disgust, but actual loathing was surprising and a little disturbing. What could Naruto have done to deserve that attitude from the village? It was just another reason why I observed the little group that formed around one Eiji Satu, because I knew he was the one that had brought in Shikamaru, Nara, and Shoji Akemini, despite the latter having come to be closer to the Uzumaki. Seeing the lazy Nara that always slept in class, wide awake and focused on a shogi match against an obviously unskilled Eiji was a surprise. Surprise was a word that seemed to follow the Sata. So, I decided to approach the group tentatively. I wasn't surprised that I startled them. Aburemi were known to have little presence. It was a skill developed to avoid the previously mentioned disgust of anyone that knew of our clan's specialization. Eiji, however, didn't seem startled by either my sudden appearance or even my sudden approach to them, or he had kept his wits remarkably well, just like Shikamaru. Being invited to their little group's after-school activities was another surprise of his. The Sato either didn't know about the Aburemi clan or didn't care about our specialization. Probably the first. Most people that came from non-shinobi families and orphans reacted the same to my clan after all. So, it was because of that I questioned them while they observed my approach to their stealth exercise, which by the way was an interesting take for it being that they even had feedback from their objectives. It was a smart idea. Do you know about the Aburemi clan? I asked bluntly to both orphans, Eiji and Naruto. No, should I? Naruto asked, confused, and Eiji just raised a curious eyebrow. The latter's non-answer was an interesting response. I suppose not. I started, we specialize in using insect colonies as companions of sorts. Just like the Enizuka have their Ninken. I explained simply. The Uzumaki frowned in confusion. How does that work? I haven't seen you with insects around like dog breath does with Akamaru, he asked. I noticed that Eiji remained silent. My clan lets them form hives inside our bodies. It's a symbiotic relationship. We provide them with a home and chakra, and they help us in various situations. Naruto's turned understandably green. Well, didn't see that coming. This time, it was Eiji who replied. I was almost surprised by his sudden response after his silence. But what did surprise me was that he sounded amused. No sign of disgust or even uneasiness. What can they do? He asked instead. Despite Aburami's being known for showing very little emotion to almost everything I had to do, conscious effort not to show my surprise at his nonchalance. Some have poisonous properties, some have sensing abilities, some can consume an enemy's chakra. I explained looking closely at his expression. Sounds useful. He commented. I noted that it must be the first time I had told someone about my clan without them reacting negatively. It was an interesting development. Then he stopped suddenly. Yes, it took some time for the idea to sink in, I guessed. We haven't accidentally stepped on one, have we? He asked nervously. And I saw Naruto look around his feet. They stay mostly in contact with my body unless I use them for something, I explained stiffly. Oh, that's a relief, he sighed. So, Naruto started talking again, with an uneasy expression and rubbing the back of his head. I guess we have to be careful not to touch you suddenly, like smacking your arm or pushing you. The Uzumaki reasoned. You don't seem affected by this information, I pointed out almost incredulously. The blonde continued rubbing the back of his head, looking away while the raven-haired boy just gave me a small smile. Well, I can't deny that it's strange, Eiji said, being careful with his words. Still, it was a lot better than anyone else I had interacted with. But to each their own, I guess. Just don't have them crawling on me and we are cool, he said calmly while Naruto nodded quickly next to him. I guess we canceled the stealth training today, huh? Shikamaru said next to us. I had forgotten he and Shoji were there for a moment. I guess we got distracted. Eiji chuckled. We were going to my house, Shoji informed me. I nodded. It was time for me to be on my way home too, I guessed. It had been interesting to be with the group for a moment. You could come too if you want, he continued. And I paused, taking advantage of my glasses to look at all their expressions. None of them seemed against the idea. Eiji's smile was friendly. Shikamaru looked like he could care less, as with everything else. Choji did look like he wasn't entirely sure, but didn't look against it either, and Naruto still seemed to be looking around for bugs. Sure, I replied, and we started walking towards the Akimichi compound. I looked at the group, this time for a different reason. Planners that didn't seem to care about the Abarume's reputation, an orphan that was understandably uneasy, but not disgusted, another orphan that even seemed to react positively to my clan's specialization. What a strange group. Nah. Eiji called my attention with a curious expression. Can I see one of those insects? Eiji Sato was a mystery. Indeed. I hate your stamina, Naruto, I grumbled as he waved me off. We started making our way to the physical training area for the conditioning exercises. So, where are we going today? Naruto asked cheerfully as I panted, my lungs desperately working to give my body much-needed oxygen. I hate exercising, Shikamaru said, to which all of us rolled our eyes. I'm sure even Shuno did. In case anyone is wondering, the Aburemi hadn't quite become a regular in our group, but he did stay with us during classes and hung out with us now and then. He mostly kept to himself while at the academy though. None of us had a problem with that. We just assumed he just was that kind of person. Honestly, I don't feel like doing anything today. How about we go to your house and play some shogi? Shikamaru, I asked with my breathing slowly coming back to normal. Sure, the lazy genius said, smirking at me while Naruto groaned. Even ignoring it is getting troublesome, he said with a sigh, and I couldn't help but agree. Nope, I'm not going to spend my day like that. Choji, how about we go? While the blonde knucklehead started making plans with the Akamichi heir, I was acutely aware of someone's eyes on us. Shikamaru and I looked at each other. For the longest time, someone was almost stalking us. Although, being completely fair, this person's attention wasn't focused on us. It was focused on main character Kun. You have 3 guesses as to who I'm talking about, and the first 2 don't count. I turned my head slightly to look at the girl with dark blue hair and almost white eyes. Hinata Hyuga really hadn't changed much from canon. Apparently, she couldn't keep her eyes off Naruto during Academy Year, and although I couldn't prove it, I was sure she watched him outside from time to time. This meant that she also watched our group most of the time, as we always were together with him. I'm really starting to think we should do something about it, I said with a grimace. Wasn't like we had a problem with the girl, not really. It was just a bit tiresome to deal with her stares sometimes. Not that the oblivious idiot noticed, but Shikamaru, Shino, and I surely did. The Aburame hadn't commented on it though. You are remarkably not troublesome, AG, but sometimes he just ended the statement with yet another sigh, and I smiled apologetically at him. During the sparring wait time, he asked, resigned. Like what? Daenerys asked me with a raised eyebrow, and I stared at him for a second. He could follow my train of thoughts. No problem. Sure enough, he sighed again. Do we have to? I don't know what is more troublesome. Doing that or keeping things like this? I kinda want to help, I said with an awkward half smile. Shyness is kinda cute, but sometimes it's just a bit much. That's her case, honestly, I said, trying not to insult her. I really didn't have a problem with her. I knew she was a great person, but that extreme shyness, I guess. I shrugged. I looked around. Reckon I'll have to fight Kiba today. Thanks, I smiled at him. Shikamaru wasn't one to give compliments. That was as close as he could get to one. Probably, he answered disinterestedly. Can't get past this week. I nodded in agreement. I had been fortunately dodging that bullet for a long time. I was running out of time. Luckily for me, I was already at a level that I was confident I could beat the Inuzuka, or at least put up a hell of a fight. I wouldn't worry too much. So, where are we going today? Naruto asked cheerfully as I panted, my lungs desperately working to give my body much-needed oxygen. I hate your stamina, Naruto, I grumbled as he waved me off. We started making our way to the physical training area for the conditioning exercises. I hate exercising, Shikamaru said, to which all of us rolled our eyes. I'm sure even Shuno did. In case anyone is wondering, the Aburame hadn't quite become a regular in our group, but he did stay with us during classes and hung out with us now and then. He mostly kept to himself while at the academy though. None of us had a problem with that. We just assumed he just was that kind of person. Honestly, I don't feel like doing anything today. How about we go to your house and play some shogi? Shikamaru, I asked with my breathing slowly coming back to normal. Sure, the lazy genius said, smirking at me while Naruto groaned. Nope, I'm not going to spend my day like that. Choji, how about we go? While the blonde knucklehead started making plans with the Akamichi heir, I was acutely aware of someone's eyes on us. Shikamaru and I looked at each other. Even ignoring it is getting troublesome, he said with a sigh, and I couldn't help but agree. For the longest time, someone was almost stalking us. Although, being completely fair, this person's attention wasn't focused on us. It was focused on main character Kun. You have 3 guesses as to who I'm talking about, and the first 2 don't count. I turned my head slightly to look at the girl with dark blue hair and almost white eyes. Hinata Hyuga really hadn't changed much from canon. Apparently, she couldn't keep her eyes off Naruto during Academy Year, and although I couldn't prove it, I was sure she watched him outside from time to time. This meant that she also watched our group most of the time, as we always were together with him. Wasn't like we had a problem with the girl, not really. It was just a bit tiresome to deal with her stares sometimes. Not that the oblivious idiot noticed, but Shikamaru, Shino, and I surely did. The Aburame hadn't commented on it though. I'm really starting to think we should do something about it, I said with a grimace. Like what? Daenerys asked me with a raised eyebrow, and I stared at him for a second. He could follow my train of thoughts. No problem. Sure enough, he sighed again. Do we have to? I don't know what is more troublesome. Doing that or keeping things like this? I kinda want to help, I said with an awkward half smile. Shyness is kinda cute, but sometimes it's just a bit much. That's her case, honestly, I said, trying not to insult her. I really didn't have a problem with her. I knew she was a great person, but that extreme shyness, you are remarkably not troublesome, AG, but sometimes he just ended the statement with yet another sigh, and I smiled apologetically at him. During the sparring wait time, he asked, resigned. I guess. I shrugged. I looked around. Reckon I'll have to fight Kiba today. Probably, he answered disinterestedly. Can't get past this week. I nodded in agreement. I had been fortunately dodging that bullet for a long time. I was running out of time. Luckily for me, I was already at a level that I was confident I could beat the Inuzuka, or at least put up a hell of a fight. I wouldn't worry too much. Thanks, I smiled at him. Shikamaru wasn't one to give compliments. That was as close as he could get to one. Just a moment later, I received a notification. Physical conditioning has gone up a level, to which I brought up the skills screen. Physical conditioning, passive, level 13. Improves the rate at which your strength and constitution increase during training by 65%. I didn't know how to feel with my progress lately. Some skills were starting to take a long time to level. 2 weeks had passed since my official spar against Choji, and I had earned just 1 level on most skills except shogi, which had gone up 3 levels, meditation having gone up 2, and Shuriken throwing that hadn't leveled up at all yet. Even my stats slowed down considerably. I had only gotten 1 level for strength and 1 for dexterity, which still came with 1 for chakra, and constitution had leveled up twice. I found myself wishing to get a new skill or something. I missed those times where I got levels left and right, but I was able to stop myself from delving in any other skill. If I fell for that, I would only increase my workload and slow my progress down even more. I couldn't afford that. Not when none of my skills were at an acceptable level. Once I had secured my place at the top of the class, only then I would consider something new. Maybe I would start training senbon, throwing, or maybe I would ask Iruka-sensei for some tips about chakra control. That way I could get a head start on that while avoiding any kind of unwanted attention. But that was for later. I didn't have the time to use on other skills when I could barely manage as it was. Okay. Sensei called for our attention while clapping. Good job, everyone. It's lunch break time, and then we start with the taijutsu spars. What did you bring today, Iji? An excited Naruto appeared in front of my face, as if he had used Shinshin, quickly followed by Choji, a deadpan at the both of them. You brought this on yourself, Shikamaru pointed out before I could say something, and I sighed. Iji Sato versus Sasuke Uchiha. Iruka-sensei called out, and my mind instantly thought, GG. After groaning and starting my way to the circle, I consoled myself with the thought that at least it wasn't Kiba the one that would give me my first defeat. As the brooding survivor made his way, I called a couple of screens. Eiji Satu. Title, Academy Student. Energy points. 31. Chakra points. Strength. Dexterity. Constitution. Chakra. Chakra control. Well, he definitely had better stats than I did. The only thing I could probably rival him in was Constitution, but that was only a possibility, not a fact. For everything else, I was painfully behind.
Basic taijutsu. Level C.
Increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. Maybe we were on the same level in taijutsu though, so there was my silver lining. Physical resistance, level 4. Reduces the damage received by purely physical attacks by 4%. Physical resistance was still painfully low. I didn't have any delusions about the skill. It was just something that was there, not a game-changing skill. At least, not yet. And at the rate it leveled, not ever. Shaking those thoughts from my head and toning out the fangirl's screams, I focused on Sasuke. His expression was as brooding as ever. No surprise there. What did surprise me was that he seemed to want to start the match quickly, almost eagerly. He was never eager for a spire. Never. I gulped as we did the seal of confrontation. After that, we both jumped back to put some distance between us, and took our stances. I waited. The Uchiha's taijutsu style consisted mainly of countering the opponent's attacks. The Sharingan made that stupidly easy after all. And while Sasuke didn't actually have the Sharingan yet, he still used the style and with impressive results too. No, I wouldn't be the one to attack. My best bet was to try and counter him instead. A gamble really, but considering that I was weaker than him in almost every aspect, everything in this match would be a gamble really. He rushed at me, and I braced myself. A punch was directed at my face. Rotating my arm, I pushed his out of the way, effectively preventing the hit. Meanwhile, my other hand formed a fist and flew towards his side. He stepped aside, dodging my punch before throwing a kick behind my leg. Good news, I didn't end up on the floor. Bad news, my balance was ruined for a second. That second was enough for him to punch the air out of me with a fist to the gut. With a step back, he readied himself for another kick, this time for more than just ruining my balance. Coughing to get my lungs working again, I followed his example, stepping back, out of his reach. I felt the wind produced by his foot graze my face, too close. As I focused on him again, I paled. He was already on me. Another punch to the gut made me fold like a wet paper, and I fell to my knees. A kick to the side of my head made everything turn white, and I felt my face hit the ground. I heard voices. My mind was too slow to translate into any kind of meaning. I saw lights, flashes of color all over my sight, but the feeling of the ground below me was oddly clear. Slowly and shakily, I pushed myself off the ground. I heard the voices lower their volume, but not stopping. I didn't hear Iruka-sensei calling the match. Fortunately for me, you should stay down. It took my brain a lot longer than it should to decipher what Sasuke said to me, but eventually I did. I was still laying pathetically on the ground. The only thing keeping our teacher from calling the match was my arms supporting my upper body weakly and awkwardly in the air. Before answering, I pushed a leg underneath me. As the light slowly blinked out of my sight, I found myself kneeling and staring down at the earth. I slowly turned my gaze to the side, where the Uchiha stood, relaxed but still focused on me. He hadn't let his guard down. I chuckled to myself. Of course he hadn't. At that moment, I thought about it. I thought about giving up. And I thought about my friends too. I would have expected Naruto to be shouting some nonsense, to use his talk jutsu on me, just as I still remembered him doing in the Chunin exams with Hinata and Sakura, but he didn't. Stand up. It was Shikamaru. I was so shocked I almost fell face first into the ground again. It'll be too troublesome to deal with your training if you lose. He and I chuckled again. What the lazy ass said. This time, it was Naruto. I could almost hear the iconic grin on his face.
They were watching, my friends were watching, but did it really matter? It was just an academy spar after all. I could keep training and then come back for a rematch. It would be fine. It wasn't that important. Not really.
You have to dream bigger. Naruto's words resounded in my head, and I pushed myself off the ground, staggering to a side on my weak legs. Yeah, if I gave up here, what was to stop me from giving up later on? From giving up in my dream? No, I had a nindo. Live life to the fullest. Sasuke didn't look like he had any problem waiting for me. That was strange, but I could definitely work with that. I looked around, acting groggier than I actually was, looking for something that could turn the tide of the battle. Then I saw it, and a crazy plan formed in my head. A smirk formed in my head. Oi, I called out while mentally bringing a couple of screens to see if my plan could work.
Yeah, more than enough.
Thank Cammy for the schedule for the spars. 2 seconds. In N seconds, I'll take you out. He smirked back at me. We'll see, he simply said, taking his stance. Running. I cast it in my mind while speeding towards him. His eyes widened in surprise. Once I was close, I jumped feet first towards him. He stepped to the side confidently. I kept smirking as I separated my feet, and a second later, I wrapped both legs around his waist height. The speed of my flight didn't stop though, so with all that momentum I swung my body in a circle, making the Uchiha's body rotate with me and throwing him completely off balance. And then I let go, throwing him off to a side. Both of us fell to the ground. I laughed. I laughed so hard, my stomach hurt. What's so funny, he said, annoyed. All that just for... Winner. Eiji Setu. Iruka called out over my laughs. Huh? Sasuke wasn't the only one to shout that in shock. I turned towards him and with a smirk in my face, I put my index finger to the ground. Look down. He did, and his mouth fell open. He was just outside the circle. Yes, I exclaimed, spreading my arms still sprawled on the ground. First place, baby. I laughed before I felt someone get a hold of my arm and pull me up. That was so awesome. Naruto exclaimed, almost making me go deaf. You should have seen the Temmie's face. It was priceless. Best prank ever, believe it. He all but shouted while helping me to our group of friends. Good job. Shoji congratulated, offering me from his bag of chips. I happily took him on his offer. I felt amazing. Certainly, an unexpected tactic. Shino said, pushing his glasses up. If only you were so smart during our matches. Shikamaru grumbled with a bored tone. I didn't even feel the need to smack him. We gotta get dinner at Ichiraku's. I have to celebrate this, I commented, making Naruto beam at me. Don't know what the fuss is about. Shikamaru shrugged. You've trained for this all this time, haven't you? He said as I took my seat. I stared at him as my brain caught what he really meant. I smiled. Sometimes, I think you are a tsundere or something, Shika, I replied, and he huffed unaffected. Troublesome, was all the answer I got. My grin widened as a screen came up. Quest complete. Win a spar against the first place. Reward.
Pose 6 taijutsu level.
Craze 2 to all physical stats. Chakra has gone up a level. Chakra has gone up a level. Wait, why isn't it basic? Skill maxed. Basic taijutsu. New skill acquired, intermediate taijutsu. I looked at the screens in stunned silence before mentally calling another one. Intermediate taijutsu active, level 3. Increases the skill of the user in hand-to-hand combat according to skill level. Active effect. Increases the user's physical stats by 2. Active effect consumption. 50 energy points per second. Cool. An active effect. Finally. Then I froze. 50 energy points per second. Are you fucking kidding? You okay there? Shikamaru said, waving his hand in front of my face. I shook my head before turning to him. He hit you pretty hard in the head, didn't he? He added with his usual bored tone. His eyes looked slightly concerned, though. Naruto and Choji weren't as reserved. Maybe, I said weakly. I'll be fine. Don't worry. Just need a minute or two. They seemed to take my word for it and continued watching the spars. Fortunately, me, Shikamaru, didn't push for a shogi match. Sasuke is still the best. Someone screeched. I turned to see a pink-haired banshee screaming like her life depended on it. Not that she was the only one, just the more vocal. He just won with a trick, a cheap trick. At that, the rest of the fangirls nodded along as she pointed at me like I had committed the worst kind of sin. Really, Naruto? I asked in disbelief. Of the whole lot of them, I shook my head. Well, he scratched the back of his neck. I was pretty desperate. Don't worry, we'll get you a better girlfriend. I looked him up and down, noting his still orange clothes. I hadn't been able to convince him to tone it down yet, but I would if it was the last thing I did. Eventually, I said, grimacing. Can you stop insulting the orange? He exclaimed, indignantly, and I shook my head. Look at the bright side. Shikamaru said, lazily waving his hand, and I raised an eyebrow at him. And that is, I asked, and he seemed to take a moment to think about it. And, isn't shouting together with her? He asked more than stated, and I turned again. Said Yamanaka was staring straight at me with an unreadable face. She isn't planning my death, is she? I asked nervously. Probably not. Shoji answered while putting another handful of chips in his mouth. I gulped before turning to the board between Shika and me. Let's just play shogi. He didn't comment, but we did start a match. In between plays, I stared at the new skill. I had a good excuse for playing under my normal level anyway. 50 energy points was a lot. Basically, I could only use its effect for all of 7 seconds. That was shit, especially considering that it only gave 2 points to each stat. Taking a deep breath in, I tried to see where the trick was. In the end, though, I just deduced that the stat increase would be worth it after I leveled it up. That, and hopefully the consumption would lower considerably too. Here's hoping. I thought to myself, holding back a grimace. Once I got over that bitter piece of news, I slowly regained my smile. 6 levels in the taijutsu skills and 2 in each physical stat. Basically, I was top of the class in taijutsu now. No matter that I barely won by a technicality, now I had the power to back it up. I was sure I had better stats than Sasuke now. Or, that's what I would like to think. However, the spar was too one-sided. There had to be a reason for that. And then I noticed the problem. My dexterity was too low. He had been too fast for me to do anything. I had probably caught up to him in terms of constitution and strength, and the levels in taijutsu probably put me ahead or at his level. But he was too fast for me to do anything. I wouldn't be able to beat him if I couldn't even land a hit. The only reason I caught him was my running speed increase and a trick. I had been ignoring my dexterity, mostly because I didn't have a good way to increase it, nor the time focus on that stat, only. But with the progress I saved due to the quest, things would change. I could spend less time training taijutsu and physical conditioning now. With those thoughts in mind, I started changing my training routine. The only things I knew affected dexterity were the Shuriken Jutsu skills, and to a lower extent, running. Which actually made me pretty happy. I loved running, and I really wanted to start making perfect scores in the Shuriken Jutsu training. I was also curious now that I had seen what happened with the skill that I managed to max. We stopped playing when Hinata was called for a spar, and focused on her fight. It was both interesting and entertaining to see. I had always thought that the gentle fist was really cool to look in action. It was even more so in real life. That style is really interesting, I commented lightly. Cool, isn't it? Naruto exclaimed. Think Hinata-chan would teach me. She would probably faint just with you asking, Naruto. I thought to myself, Shikamaru looked like he had thought the same thing. It could happen. The Nara ended up saying with a barely restrained smirk. I rolled my eyes. I don't think I could use that style, said a dejected Shoji. I nodded. Probably not. It's all precision and less force, basically the opposite of your style. He nodded back. I wouldn't feel too bad if I were you, though. You are the strongest one here. That style wouldn't be suited for you. He paused, his eating, to turn to me.
Thanks.
He said, almost beaming at me. He really had confidence issues. Just stating facts, I replied, smiling back. A moment later, Hinata won her match. The only ones that could do something to her were Ino and Sakura. After all, and considering the small numbers of the female part of the class, the teachers couldn't keep the spars just to the capable fighters and heirs. That group was conformed only by the aforementioned trio after all, and that was too small a number to exclude the others. As she took her seat, I stood up. I'll be back in a second. As I made my way to where she was, I saw her start fidgeting and poking her fingers together, no doubt aware I was going towards her. I sat next to her and extended my hand to introduce myself. Not that I thought she didn't know me, but I wanted to keep myself as polite as I could. Nice match, I said with a smile. I'm Eiji Sato, by the way. And it's even thank you, she stuttered out. I did my best to keep my face from expressing anything about it. Hinata H. Yuga, she said shyly, my hand. You hold back a lot when you spar, I pointed out, and she tensed up. I was just wondering why. I don't like that, she said, looking away from me and poking her fingers together again. You know we are training to be ninja, right? I asked, keeping my tone from sounding like I was mocking her. Her only answer was looking down. I meant that we need to know how to fight. I wouldn't want you to hold back if you sparred against me. It would make the spar useless if I can't improve. I don't know if what I say makes sense to you, I explained, and she kept her gaze down. I don't know, she whispered, so low I barely caught it. I still don't like it, she admitted, and I held back a sigh. What's your style's name? I asked, changing topics. The Gentle Fist, she answered. Why is it called that? I knew, obviously, but AG didn't, so I played the part. Because even the lightest epithet can do serious D damage. Well, her stutter wasn't so bad. Or maybe it was because I wasn't Naruto. Yeah, that was probable. Wow, sounds dangerous, I commented. It is. She nodded, suddenly looking much more nervous. And why's that? I continued asking. With the Bibyokugun and I injected chakra through Oavingers, she hesitated for a second. We can say, cause internal D damage, she explained. We can also close T tenketsus, she added after a moment. Tenketsus are the places from where we can use chakra, right? Thankfully, we had classes about that, although Sensei tended to just gloss over it as we would see it in ERT next year. Right, she confirmed. Not that I needed her to. Closing tenketsus, wouldn't you basically disable someone without actually hurting them? I asked this time, and she seemed a bit stunned. It could be the case. People still can use T-taijutsu though, she answered. Still, leaving someone unable to use chakra is basically taking them out. Not many can fight that well. Only using taijutsu, I reasoned. True, she accepted. I see why someone would call it Gentle Fist. You can basically defeat someone without damaging them, I said. I had finally reached the point that I wanted to. If I remembered correctly, Hinata was a bit like Choji, too gentle to fight properly. I wanted to show her that fighting didn't actually mean damage, especially for her. I guess so. She nodded. It's a pity you need your bloodline limit. I would love to learn that style, I commented. Why, you could, she replied, and my head snapped at her. I didn't know that. So, I was pretty surprised. Really? She seemed taken aback by my reaction and leaned back with wide eyes before simply humming and nodding. But how? I asked incredulously. You said you needed the Byakugan, I pointed out. And normally, you do. The Hyuga answered. But some blocks and Oregon strikes don't need Byakugan precision to be done, she explained, and I stared at her wide-eyed until she started fidgeting again. Could you teach me? I asked, almost pleading.
I'm not sure,
she said, looking away. It's a C-clan style after all. Her eyes dropped and a sad smile formed in her face. Then you need permission? My voice came out calmer this time, as I realized I was making her uncomfortable. Yes? And I doubt I could get it, she replied with a sad tone. I see. Then how about spars? You can do that outside of the academy, can't you? She seemed surprised that I hadn't pushed the issue or just left her after that. I'd see can. Why? Hinata asked, curious and nervous at the same time. You could join us, I offered with a smile. Shikamaru, Choji, Naruto, and I get together sometimes to spar against each other. It's good practice, I explained, and I had to suppress an amused smile as I saw her face slowly turn red after I mentioned Naruto. We do stealth practice, play shogi, and go out to eat too, if you are interested. As I said, you are welcome to join if you want. I finished while standing up and shaking the dust off my clothes. It was good talking to you, Hinata. See you later. See you later. And like that, our little conversation was over. Internally, I wondered if she would be brave enough to ask her father about teaching us the gentle fist, or even just about hanging out with us. It would probably take a long time, if ever. Let's continue, shall we? I asked Shikamaru as I took my usual seat in front of him. How did it go? He asked, making his move. It went well, I think. We'll have to see, I shrugged. In 2 different locations, roughly at the same time.
He defeated Uchiha,
said a serious yet curious voice, admittedly through a trick. But he did. What do we know about the boy? The person asked. His subordinate. Orphan of the Kyuubi incident. Nothing of notice after that until the start of this year's academy classes. Another voice replied. Possible prodigy. Possible bloodline limit. Possibly both. What bloodline limit? Unregistered, unknown. So far, we have collected an increase in running speed at will, occasional decrease of presence while engaging in stealth-based activities, and an abnormally high development in the strength and stamina departments. And this without the use of chakra. It is believed that if he does have a bloodline limit, it is one based around development. Anything else of notice? He has been surrounding himself with the Akamichi, Nara, and Aburame clan heirs, and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He has also approached the current Hyuga heiress. I see, gathering political power, or just capable individuals, or both. Maybe. The leader pondered for a moment before turning to his subordinate. Keep me up to date with any new information that you find about him. Eiji Sato seems like an interesting individual. Running. Active. Level 16. When used, increases the speed of the user while running by 100%. Consumption 6 energy points per second. I grinned like a madman as I got inside my apartment. Finally, I had reached another milestone with running. The cost had gone down another little bit. To most people, it would be just another almost unnoticeable change. To me, though, it meant a lot. Why? Simple. With this little boost, the 2 levels I had achieved in dexterity and the level I got in constitution, another goal would be met. It was time to dethrone the speed demons. The last 2 weeks had been a lot different from the time before. With me having stopping my extra training in taijutsu and physical conditioning outside of classes, I had a lot more free time. Free time that was spent in shuriken jutsu and running specifically. Although, being honest, I didn't quite use as much time in those really. I did increase that training. But I had been focused on meditation too, considering that I spent a crazy amount of energy points with running every day, both in class and out of it. I had spent a long time just recovering, and that meant meditation. That much time to myself had opened my mind to some things, mainly my chakra training, or rather lack thereof. I still stood by my choice to focus on things that were actually being put to test, but I realized something that had escaped my mind. The first step of chakra control was the leaf concentration exercise, which was simply sticking a leaf to your forehead, which in turn was something that I could pretty easily do while meditating. I really wanted to punch myself when I realized that. However, there was no point in crying over spilt milk. I could still take advantage of that. I just had to convince Eruka to teach me the exercise, and I could start. I would still be over half a year ahead of the class if I could manage that, which would still be pretty awesome. Finishing a little snack to recover some stamina after training, I sat down and started meditating. I was pretty sure I was approaching another checkpoint in that skill too. I wasn't sure what it was, but I could feel it. My mind seemed to try to reach something every time I used the skill these days, and I couldn't wait to find out what I was. A little part of me wished it was natural energy and go all sage before even being out of the academy. In the meantime, though, I just enjoyed the feeling of my chakra coursing through my body. Even after all that time had passed, I had never got over the excitement of it. The raw energy traveling through my pathways to every single part of my body was exhilarating. It was the best, plain and simple. All that vanished when I opened my eyes and the blood froze inside my veins. I wasn't looking at my apartment's room anymore. Instead, I was surrounded by white walls, a white ceiling, and an extra white tiled floor. The bed I was sitting on was almost equally white, with just a light gray sheet to offer a change of color. My breath got caught on my throat as I felt a pressure on my chest, like an oppressing cold hand wrapping itself around my lungs and heart. It was a hospital room. My hospital room. Screens had popped up, but my mind didn't register them. The sight in front of me was everything I could see. As my panic grew, I desperately stood up and ran towards the only way out of the room. A door, opening it only served to fuel my dread as I looked outside. The void! My breath quickened, and I felt cold sweat slowly cover my body. My hands started shaking, and my legs felt like they would give at any moment. It couldn't be happening. I had escaped that room. I had gotten out of the void. I couldn't be back. Desperately, my eyes turned towards the scroll-like screen. Surprise colored my expression as I read the messages. A deep breath did wonders to calm down my emotions, although it didn't help my body stop shaking from the shock. Meditation has gone up a level. You have unlocked your Mindscape. This is my Mindscape, I thought with no small amount of disgust. No, this just won't do. Looking back to the screen, I considered it. With some mental commands, I tried to see if there was a skill or perk about it, but there was nothing. Taking a deep breath in, even though I was on my Mindscape and shouldn't need to breath at all, I looked around willing the space to change. Slowly, the room changed into my apartment's kitchen dining room, a small hall attached to it with a door to a bathroom and my room. Looking out through the window, I saw the void still there. This time, with a calmer mind, I was able to see small, almost invisible bubbles spread over the empty space. Willing one to come closer, I saw images flashing inside. Memory.
I needed to protect my mind. I realized, Yamanaka would have a field day with my literally empty mind. There was absolutely nothing to stop them from seeing everything. I couldn't let that happen. Unnecessarily cracking my neck, I set myself to work.
Soon, taking advantage of all the maps I had drawn, which I could easily summon inside my Mindscape, I had an altered version of Konoha as my Mindscape. There were a lot of places I hadn't explored yet, but it would do. Kami, bless the cartography skill. It wasn't like this for nothing. Cartography level 9. Improves the quality of maps drawn by 45%. With the base of it all set, I started placing my memories in secure places. What I did was place them inside places with meaning and behind a password. Like inside Naruto's apartment with the password, wanna go to Ichiraku's you knuckle-headed stamina freak. Or Shikamaru's house with the password, wanna play shogi you lazy cloud watcher, and so on. I don't know how well it would work, but I willed it to be so that if someone tried to access my memories without the right passwords, they would be sent right to the void, which I had placed below the ground. If it actually worked, then anyone stupid enough to try to get something out of my mind would get trapped inside that hell until they gave up. I did everything as quick as I could. I didn't want to go to bed too late. I would probably come back the next day to work on details and maybe change passwords in some places. I had to take something especially secure for my past memories after all. For now, it would do. Willing myself out of the Mindscape, I was welcomed by another screen. New perk acquired, Inner Strength. Inner Strength. Increased resistance to outside control of the mind and the body, not applied to Genjutsu. Useful. Really useful. I thought, while grinning, I could think off the top of my head of two techniques that this would be almost a necessity against. The Yamanaka and the Nara techniques. Not bad for a first perk to have. Not bad at all. Looking at the clock, I cursed. Better go to bed. I had plans for tomorrow. Start! Iruka-sensei called out and I instantly activated running, as usual. Right after that, I heard Kiba cursing under his breath. Poor guy never got over his loss. It added to my amusement, to be honest. After a few laps, I heard Naruto shouting at me as I passed right next to Sasuke and him. It was the first time I had gotten a whole lap past them. That sweet, sweet decrease in the cost of running kept me going for a long time. A minute or so, if my math was right. That was a long time to have double my normal speed, just long enough to get a lap on the speed and stamina demons. And also, just enough to finally end in first place before they could caught up. Quest complete. Finish the running exercise in first place. Reward. Prebuchin running level. Pori 1 dexterity level. Skill maxed, running. New skill acquired, free running. Sweet, I said grinning madly at the screens. With that reward and my focused training, dexterity was already catching up with my strength. That was great news, but one could never have too much speed. I really wanted to make Lee look slow in comparison to me. No offense to Choji, but I had realized that speed was a lot better than strength in my spar with Sasuke.
That has to be a jutsu.
Naruto said for the 100th time, the only difference from all the other times was that he was pouting now. I only chuckled at him as we made our way towards the physical training area. You wish? That way you would have a chance at learning it. It's all skill, my dumb friend, I said, patting him in the shoulder. It wasn't even a lie, I thought amused. You are so unfair, he whined. You are one to talk. You are almost a literal chakra beast, I thought to myself. We would get to that part eventually. Just give up, Naruto. It's too troublesome to try and get him to talk about his trick. You'll never get it out of him. Shikamaru said, shaking his head at us. See? He knows me. I'm disappointed in you. I thought you knew me better than that. Naruto, he just kept pouting. Does that mean we get to celebrate your first place with food again? Chives asked with a hopeful glint in his eyes. Shikamaru and I shared a look before I smirked at the Akamichi and shook my head. Of course! You know what? If I get my perfect score in the Shuriken Jutsu practice today, I'll prepare a feast for all of us. Shino included. I added the final part, turning towards the Oborome. I shall make myself available then. The bug lover said, pushing his sunglasses up. Thanks for the vote of confidence, buddy. I said, grinning at him. Betting against you in that would be stupid. You've been awfully close since a week ago. Shikamaru pointed out with a bored look. Everyone knows you'll achieve it any day now. Oh, I feel the love, guys, I said, wiping a non-existent tear from my eye. Your turn, AG. Irika said, as I took my place in the shooting range. Meanwhile, I just glared at a screen in front of me. Shuriken Jutsu. Shuriken throwing. Level 10. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a shuriken by 100%. Kunai. Throwing. Level. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a kunai by 90%. Senbon throwing. Level 1. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a senbon by 10%. Just a level shy of perfection. Today was the day I would achieve it. I knew it. I would do it. A now familiar nervousness crept through my body. The shurikens left my hand as fast as I could draw them from the pouch we used during the exercise. We weren't allowed to have our own weapons until graduation, after all. All the metal stars buried themselves right in the tiny yellow point in the center of every target. Some students called them perfect hits, the center of the center. I took a deep breath in as I prepared myself for the kunai part. This would take much more effort if I wanted to overcome that level I still lacked to pull of the feet. Concentrating as much as I could, I started shooting slowly, this time. With every perfect hit, I grew more nervous, instead of the other way around, until I reached the last one. Flexing my fingers in an attempt to shake off the nervousness, I took one more kunai and readied myself. I took a shaky breath in as I saw the knife-like weapon fly off my hand and stared as it made its way towards the target in what seemed like slow motion. It hit right in the center of the center. Yes, I cheered to myself before I heard Naruto echo me. With a face-splitting grin plastered on my face, I let myself be shaken by the excited blonde as I read over the new mirrors. Kunai throwing has gone up a level. Quest complete. Achieve a perfect score in the Shuriken Jutsu exercise. Reward. Do levels to all Shuriken Jutsu skills. I brought up the skill tree without missing a beat. Shuriken Jutsu. Shuriken throwing. Level 20. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a shuriken by 100%. Increases accuracy against a moving target with a shuriken by 20%. Kunai, throwing, level 20. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a kunai by 100%. Increases accuracy against a moving target with a shuriken by 20%. Senbon throwing, level 3. Increases accuracy against a stationary target with a senbon by 30%. I didn't even have words to explain how awesome it felt to look at the skills now. That quest reward had probably saved me months of training. This last month had been productive as fuck, if I do say so myself. We'll have a feast. An excited Choji seemed to realize finally, and I couldn't hold back a laugh at that. I would try my best to cook like my life depended on it. First, because this meant that I was the best of the class. I was first place in Taijutsu, Shuriken Jutsu, and even the laps. Second, because I wanted to do something nice for my friends too. I wouldn't be half as good without their help in my training after all. However, I had something to do before I went home and started cooking. As everyone left the academy, I stayed behind. Aruka-sensei looked up at me from his notes. Can I do something for you, AG? Good job in the laps and the Shuriken Jutsu practice, by the way. I'm truly proud of your progress. He said, smiling at it. Gesture that I returned. I was wondering if I could start training with Senbon now, sensei. I asked as confidently as I could. At the start of the year, he had only said that we could ask about that later, and that was it. Maybe I was here too soon. But considering that I had already perfect accuracy in stationary targets, to keep training as I did now would be a waste of time, literally. Of course, he answered easily. I've honestly been waiting for you to ask since some time ago. He then proceeded to chuckle at my gobsmacked expression. Did you think we required you to have completely perfect accuracy to start Senbon training? While the key part of using Senbon is accuracy, having perfect aim with kunai and shuriken doesn't mean that much as all of them are different, he explained with an indulging smile that made me feel like the kid I was supposed to be. So, yes, you can start with it during the next class on Shuriken Jutsu. Thank you, sensei, I said sincerely, with as much emotion as I could muster. Also, I started again, this time much more nervously, and the scarred teacher raised a curious eyebrow at me. I was wondering if you would consider starting my chakra training early. I finished while straightening my back to stare back at the surprised teacher. I can honestly say that I'm surprised, he said with an undertone of disappointment that actually made me feel bad. It's not like you are the first one to ask that question, but you have been the perfect student so far. AG, I didn't think you would be so eager for jutsu. That's more something that I would expect from Naruto or Kiba, he admitted.
This isn't about flashy jutsu.
I countered, this is about me having the power I'll need once I become a shinobi. The academy has a program especially planned to train shinobi. AG, you'll have what you need. Yeah, I'll have what I need to be another member of the Genin Corps, I said bitterly, and I saw his shoulders sag a little. What chance do orphans like me stand against clan, or even clan members? They have bloodline limits, special taijutsu styles, special ninjutsu. Even the training that they get from their families is enough of an advantage. What can we orphan and civilians do against that? Even with that, you still stand at the top of the class. He tried to reason. That's because we aren't using chakra at all. If I don't get started on my training in advance, I'll start next year right where I started this one, at the bottom, I replied, containing my emotions as much as I could. I refused to be just another core Junin that takes several years just to be promoted to Chuinin because I didn't have a true Juinin sensei to train me, and to get a Juinin sensei I'll need to be high enough in the class to stand right beside the clan heirs. I knew explaining the separation of Genin teams and the Genin Corps was a bad idea, he said, massaging the bridge of his nose, right over his scar. Then he just sat there staring at me without saying anything, and I found myself incapable of further defending my case. The system we were talking about was simple enough. What apparently went unsaid in the manga and show was what happened to everyone that wasn't on a Genin team. Because honestly, who would believe that the academy only passed around 9 students in a good year, considering that the only people mentioned from the year prior were Team Guy? The simple version was that the students were divided in 2 groups, those with potential and those without it. The formers would be divided in teams led by a Junin that would both teach the Genin and guide them through their missions, acting as both teacher and guard in order for the village not to lose a possible valuable asset. The latters were the Genin Corps, or basically those that didn't quite cut it. These students could still become Genin, but would instead be left on their own to do D-rank missions. After some time, they would eventually gather enough standing, and with some luck, a few other such Genin that would take C ranks with them. If they were fortunate enough, they would become Chunin after a few years. There's no need to say which group I wanted to be in. Being completely honest, I could most probably become a team member without much problem. Between the system and the sheer time I spent training, it would be easy enough, but I didn't want to just pass. No, I knew what was coming, and I wanted to be as prepared as I could. I had been neglecting my chakra training because I had too many skills to train in. Now that I had somewhat took off the weight of taijutsu, I had the time I needed to start with chakra control if I could. Now I just needed the actual knowledge. I can't give you permission to do it, Aruka said finally, making me deflate in my seat. And I also can't teach you anything related to chakra in depth until next year, he added, making my head drop. But I perked up instantly. I'll ask the higher-ups. They can give you permission to start it, and me permission to teach you. But you'll have to wait for an answer, he informed me, and just sat there staring at him with wide eyes for a long moment before snapping out of it. Oko, of course, I replied quickly. I'll wait. Thank you. Thank you very much, Iruka-sensei, I said, standing up and bowing to him. He chuckled good-naturedly. I don't think you know, but I'm an orphan too. He started, and obviously I knew it, but it felt somewhat different to have him tell me about it. Most of my knowledge could be changed, due to this being an AU, which it was, as was confirmed by the electives. I know exactly what you feel, AG, and like I said, you are an excellent student. I want to see you go far, for all of us orphans. He gave me a warm smile that I returned instantly. I'll make sure not to disappoint, sensei. Shikaku, Nara, POV. It had been a troublesome day, so very troublesome. I was just coming back from a long and troublesome meeting with the Hokage and his counselors. Curses were fired inside my mind towards the day that I got placed in the position of Jonin commander. It was such a drag. But it had been especially troublesome due to the number of unknowns regarding the topic of the meeting. That said topic would most probably be located inside my house playing shogi against my son. Didn't help matters. I am obviously talking about one Iji Sato. He had garnered the attention almost instantly at the start of the year by befriending the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, Naruto Uzumaki, and while that by itself wasn't such a worrisome thing, it did justify an instant background check. Nobody wanted to risk him being a spy or worse, a root member. Done so, getting his hands in something as dangerous as a tailed beast was too troublesome. The results of that investigation had been so average that it was baffling. It almost made everyone think he was some kind of spy. If not for the fact that we had checked so many times, it wasn't even funny. It was almost too average for it to be true. But alas, it was. This made even less sense as time passed. 2 things happened after that. First, the boy had started to grow strong and to display some interesting abilities, nothing too impressive, but interesting nonetheless, at least at that moment. The second was him proceeding to befriend the Akamichi heir, Choji, and my son, Shikamaru. It had caused no small amount of worry for my friend Choji's family and mine. We had investigated the boy once more, only to come out with the same results. Yoshino and I had been keeping a close eye on him. A lot of people had tried, and still tried, to get close to young impressionable heirs of the powerful clans. Stupid and troublesome. The lot of them. However, the boy seemed to be a genuine friend to all 3 of his little circle. I would even go as far as saying that he was especially close to my son. He seemed smart enough to somewhat keep up with him, at least, and he had the will not to crumble at the evident superiority of the Nera's strategic mind, which more often than not scared the less intelligent people. The fact that he didn't seem to give up and continued to try made even me want to give it a go against him in shogi. It had been a long time since someone played against me with some actual will behind it after all. For that alone, I was grateful for the Sato's existence, if nothing else. But he had done much more than that. He had gained some favor from both the Akimichi and us. The Nara, when he got our heirs to train, if only a bit. Choza had been over the moon when Satu got his son to start taking taijutsu training more seriously, and to throw actual punches, and I was just happy that Yoshino wasn't shouting about Shikamaru napping all day. It made it easier for me to take naps. However, the troublesome boy hadn't stopped there. No, he continued to grow. His running boost had gotten faster and lasted for longer. He seemed to be able to reduce his very presence when he wanted to go unnoticed, and the way his strength and stamina grew was prodigious at the very least. That, combined with the fact that he had gotten yet another heir in his circle in the form of Shino Aburame, had started to seriously worry some people. So much so that Enbiu had been sent to gather information about him for a few weeks, when it was reported that he seemed to do what he was supposed to, which is to say study, train, and hang out with his friends. The patrol was removed. Now, just some weeks ago, he had defeated the last scion of the Uchiha clan. Granted, it had been more cunning and luck than actual strength and technique, but he did it nonetheless, and right after that, he approached none other than the Hyuga heiress. I could only shake my head at the boy. He must have some kind of death wish. It was like he was pushing for people to notice him, which in a world like ours meant nothing but troublesome things. He probably didn't know it. His strategical knowledge wasn't that good, if his matches against Shikamaru were anything to go by, but his actions were actually protecting him. A slip and he would be death faster than he can say shinobi. But as it was, his actions kept him on the radar of a lot of people. The Aburame, the Akimichi, us, and even the Hokage. Like that it was more difficult for, say, Danzo to get his hands on him for his apparent bloodline limit or talent. Nobody could approach him without someone else noticing. I finally arrived to my home and started getting ready for a nap before dinner. "Welcome home," came the voice of my wife from inside the kitchen. "I'm back," I replied while already planning to go straight to sleep. That's when I distantly heard the voices of the boys. "Welcome back, Nirasama," said the voice of the one that had given me extra work. Just my luck, that nap had sounded like such a good plan. "Hi, Dad," was the lazy greeting of my son. "Hello, boys. How are you doing?" I asked, and kept an ear up for any detail I could get. As always, really, the Satu answered, confirming that my son remained the better one of the two. He didn't even sound disappointed or frustrated. He was a strange one like that. "You should study more strategy and shogi instead of looking for more training," my son advised, and I stopped on my tracks. "Honestly, you just reduced your taijutsu training to add senbon training and possibly chakra control." I frowned. Adding senbon wasn't a usual decision made by academy students, or even most genin and chunin. They required too much skill to be used properly after all. And getting to that level skill would see that the person trying to achieve it spent most of their time on that alone. It was a dangerous decision to make. But maybe the boy just wanted something to do, as the reports said his skill on Shurikenjutsu was perfect, at least with kunai and shuriken. "Why? Are you getting tired of winning already? Just play against your dad," the Seiru suggested with an amused tone. "No, I just get tired just by knowing your training schedule. Why do you even try so hard? You are already top of the class. One would think you would relax a little, but you want to train even more." That was an interesting question, and as such it brought silence as the other boy seemed to take a moment to consider it. "You are smart, Shikamaru," the red-eyed boy pointed out, making my son snort and almost achieving the same with me. "So," Shikamaru urged with a bored tone, "you won't fall for it if I say it's for the will of fire, will you?" the Sato asked before chuckling weakly to himself. I would be disappointed if Shikamaru did. My son seemed to have given some kind of response, because the boy then continued. "It is actually true." I narrowed my eyes in suspicion, or partially at least. "How so?" Shikamaru asked with the same suspicion in his voice that I was feeling. "It's good that we are playing shogi," the boy said out of the blue, almost catching me off guard. "It helps me explain this." "Shikya, would you say that there's a in real life?" he asked, and I froze. Where I was standing, right outside the room they were playing in, it had become somewhat of a habit to stop from time to listen in. From the corner of my eye, I saw that Yoshino was leaning against the door frame of the kitchen, listening too. That had been an interesting thing to say. "The Hokage," my son answered instantly without thinking. I wanted to sigh at that. He didn't get it yet. He was too young. "I don't believe so," the Sarutu said instantly, and I gave my full focus back to the conversation. "The Hokage fights like everyone else, which means that the king is someone or something else. Maybe the kid was smarter than I thought." "And what would that be?" "It depends on the person, I think," Sarutu said, and the rustle of clothes told me he shrugged. "What would you fight for if someone attacked Konoha right now?" he asked before scoffing. "Probably at my son." "Don't look at me like that. There have been 3 world shinobi wars over the last 6 generations. Shika." I was actually impressed. Even Shikamaru, with his prodigious mind, even for a Nara, was still naive enough to overlook the dangers of the world we lived in. But it was probable that being an orphan gave the boy some insight on the darker side of things. "Maybe there won't be a war. Maybe we'll be lucky," the boy continued, "but we still will eventually go out there, probably with a team, in missions that will be dangerous. I don't want it to be my fault when a team member dies. I don't want it to be my fault if someone I know is killed or worse." I noticed that he said when and not if. At first, he really had his eyes open to the truth. Apparently, I didn't know if that was good or bad. Time passed, but neither the boys nor Yoshino nor me showed signs of moving. The only sound in the house was that of the pieces on the shogi board being moved occasionally. I moved to the kitchen in order to stand beside my wife as I considered the boy that was currently playing against my son. The silence was eventually broken though, and what was said brought a beaming smile to my wife's face and swell of pride inside me. Nah. DG. Are you up for a spar?